Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 27th of August. Today, Nadine Dorries finally quits. The Conservative MP and former minister has resigned and accused the Prime Minister of endangering her safety by whipping up a public frenzy.
FIFA has suspended the Spanish Football Federation president Luis Rubiales over that World Cup kiss. The federation instead says it's going to take legal action against what they called lies.
We're going to be heading to Wales today as many people choose the nation as their destination for staycations. So we want to know, what would be your choice?
Beautiful, isn't it? And Jonathan from the Met Office has your weather.
A mixed bag of weather today. Some sunshine, but also showers and drizzly rain for others. Join me later to find out what you will be experiencing.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Staycations we're going to talk about a lot today. Dawlish is apparently the nation's favourite, as we told you yesterday. We had Jeff Moody down there. But Wales is proving to be very popular.
Wales is beautiful. It's just, you know, you always have to cross your fingers and hope for the weather.
Well, that's always the way down here, isn't it? Down here, in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when people go to the Lake District and complain that it's raining, and locals always say, well, why do you think it's so green and beautiful?
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You just have to be lucky.
I mean, obviously, the lake should be your number one destination.
Is that right?
Oh, quite. Yes, obviously.
Wales has got some beautiful beaches.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely glorious place.
That's true. I like Nottinghamshire because I went to university and first few jobs around Nottinghamshire. According to the Daily Star, though, if you're going to go to Sherwood Forest, you've got to be careful because it's full of
naked ramblers.
Naked ramblers, yes.
What is it with naked rambling? I mean, why would you want to?
So, put your little Johns away, says the Daily Star. Yeah. Men in frights.
Yeah, that's
one of the headlines. What else have they come up with? Hands off the... No,
there's some rude headlines as well.
But anyway, there's pictures of naked ramblers in there, which I won't show.
No, don't show. Don't go there.
Well, look, if people want to do it, fine. We've all seen it before, haven't we? Once you've seen one, you've seen them all.
But there was a story, wasn't there, last week about, you know, at the moment there are huge fields of sunflowers. You can go to a sunflower farm and you can do selfies in amongst these beautiful sunflowers. And of course, they're majestic and they're very tall and big and look fantastic. But a lot of these sunflower farms have found that people are actually taking off their clothes for selfies amongst the sunflowers.
I can see the appeal.
Can you?
Yes, I can see the appeal if you're surrounded by nature and it's all just literally round you, where you'd want to strip off and just sort of just be part of nature and run about. Not if there are a load of other people there.
No, well, that was the problem. They've actually had to put up warning signs because there's some families who go. They take their kids there, obviously, at the moment, play amongst the sunflowers. But you can come across some sort of naked people doing selfies on sunflowers.
Yeah, I can sort of...
Yeah, right. OK. It's the things people do.
I wouldn't do it if there was a crowd.
No.
If it was just me and him, it'd be all right.
OK.
There you go.
Have you ever...
I'll see you there.
Have you ever written... No. Have you ever written a resignation letter full of fury?
No.
Have you ever told people when you leave a job, have you ever told them what you really think of them?
No, but I've fantasised about it.
Yeah. Apparently, I was told just a few minutes ago about this thing called the exit interview. I didn't know that. Certainly not in my day.
Yeah, a lot of places
If you leave
a
company or something, they insist on doing an exit interview and ask you why you're going and how you feel about it and is there anyone... Yes, that's right, exactly. And I didn't know. It sounds very dangerous to me. So would you have your say, your real say, in an exit interview?
So you'd be a bit tempted in an exit interview. But I would have loved to have sent a really nasty email round. Well, not nasty, but a really truthful email round when I've left jobs. And instead, you just do that. It's been wonderful. You do
the graceful thing, don't you? The dignified thing. I once it was after a programme that I did, and I wrote a text to a friend of mine saying what I really thought of the guy who'd been the producer, and I really had a go about him. I was, you know, I had a go. Unfortunately, and rather stupidly, I sent it to him instead of to my friend. And I only realised several minutes later, and so there wasn't time to undo it. And all I could think of then was to send him another text that saying, oops, that really wasn't meant for you, but I'm not sorry, and now you know what I think of you.
Did he reply?
He did reply, and he replied quite gracefully, actually, and just said, well, at least, now I know. And that was that.
Oh,
but
there you go.
If you've ever written a resignation letter and had a real go at the people you're resigning from, or if you've had one of these dreadful-sounding exit interviews and you've really had your say, love to hear from you, please. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yes, well, that all ties in with our top story this morning, because Nadine Dorries, remember her? She quit with immediate effect 2 months ago.
Well, that's right.
But then did nothing.
But now she really has.
Now she's actually gone from the House of Commons, more than 2 months, as we say, after pledging to stand down.
If you remember, former Culture Secretary and staunch ally of Boris Johnson, well, she used her resignation letter to attack the Prime Minister. She accused him of abandoning Conservative principles, amongst other things.
Yeah, let's talk to Charlie Rowley, former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, who probably sent a very vicious resignation letter when you quit, did you? I don't know. Probably, maybe not.
No, I didn't get the chance.
No, there you go. What are we to make of this? Because, I mean, Nadine Dorries has got a reputation, right, even before she was a minister and all the rest of it, as being someone who doesn't sort of hold her tongue very much. She's really let rip.
She has. Well, you were just talking about the naked ramblers, and there's no rambling in this letter, and it's been all laid to bear.
Yes,
to say in her letter. And it's extraordinary because, as resignation letters go, you usually just sort of sign off, whatever the circumstances, by saying, thank you very much, Prime Minister. It's been a privilege of my life to serve. And you list some of your achievements, and then you get a nice letter back to say thank you for your service, and you did achieve X, Y, Z that you've set out, and wish you all the well, and look forward to receiving your support on the back benches. Not quite the case here, I feel. And Nadine goes into many different aspects of what she's unhappy about. She takes it quite personally. She thinks over the summer that Rishi Sunak is responsible for allowing her to be attacked verbally by the media, by other colleagues, which resulted, in her words, as a visit from the police at her home because of security fears. I don't think you can lay all of that at the footstep of at the door of the Prime Minister, or anyone for that matter, because, as you say, she agreed to resign 2 months ago and has been hanging on ever since. So I think people will just welcome the fact that she's now decided to go as she said that she would.
She gets very personal, though, doesn't she? She implies... Well, she doesn't imply. She does say that she was let down by him. She says, you flashed your gleaming smile in your Prada shoes and Savile Row suit from behind a camera, but you just weren't listening. Reminds you a bit of what Zac Goldsmith said, too.
Quite, and you're absolutely right. And she goes on in the letter to re-quote Zac Goldsmith, who obviously resigned over his view that the Prime Minister wasn't taking the natural world as seriously as he should. And Zac Goldsmith was a former Environment Minister. It won't be lost on anyone to know that both Zac Goldsmith and Nadine were huge supporters of Boris Johnson. And so I think it is a shame that Nadine has never supported Rishi Sunak. She's obviously been very fond and was a fan of Boris Johnson, and we all were a fan of Boris Johnson, but that time has come to an end. But I think for Nadine Dorries, you've got to ask yourself, what is it that, you want, out of this letter, but what is it that you've essentially wanted throughout your time in politics?
I wonder if she has laid herself bare a little bit, because we know she hung on for 2 months, and you could argue selfishly to try to find out why she wasn't made a member of the House of Lords. Because she clearly thinks that she should be in the House of Lords. But also, she says, I shall take comfort from explaining to people exactly how you and your allies achieved an undemocratic upheaval in my book.
Yes.
So she's used it to promote her book, which is, I don't know, is she going to damage herself with this?
Potentially. And I think, look, Nadine, when she resigned 2 months ago, she said, look, she had a column, she had a media career coming, she's got a book, she's written books before. If she wanted to pursue that, she wanted to spend more time with her kids and grandkids. But that's a reason to resign and leave, but then that changed from resigning to actually, I'm going to, as you rightly said, Steve, I'm going to stick around a bit and put in a subject access request to the Cabinet Office to see what conversations had been taking place, which might reveal why she wasn't given a peerage as she was promised, or she believes she was promised, but it doesn't quite work like that, Nadine. There's a whole HOLAC, House of Lords Appointments Committee, that vets everybody that goes into the House of Lords, and if it wasn't to be this time round, then, that's that. There's no conspiracy necessarily against you. And I have to say, Nadine, that I think the Prime Minister's got probably a bit too much on his plate, as has his team, as has every other minister that's working in the government. They've all got a bit too much on to then be worrying about Nadine Dorries, I'm afraid. So
she's hardly a mega figure, is she, politically? And yet, she's on the front page of many of the papers because of the way in which she has resigned, really, now.
I think so. And look, she will attack the Prime Minister for all sorts of things. But I think what people will be left asking the question is, and she's asked the Prime Minister, what have you achieved? I think you need to probably look in the mirror, Nadine, and ask yourself, what have you achieved? Because all I know about Nadine Dorries, and behind the scenes, in meetings, she's perfectly reasonable and very able. But it just seems to me that throughout her political career, she attacked David Cameron and George Osborne, calling them two posh boys that don't know the price of milk. And this is a Prime Minister that reformed the Conservative Party, that made it electable again. She didn't back Theresa May's Brexit deal. Probably in part because she was very supportive of Boris, and that's absolutely fine. She supported Boris no end, give her credit for that. But now we're back to attacking the Prime Minister, the Conservative Prime Minister, again, because it's not Boris Johnson, and she did a little stint on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So Nadine, I don't think people quite know who
Does she not have some points, though, that I think some people will argue, fair enough? She says you have no mandate from the people and the government is adrift. You have squandered the goodwill of the nation for what? She makes the point that, you're in that position as Prime Minister unelected.
Well, she will know more than most as a politician that the Conservative Party was the party that is the governing party, and it has had to select its leaders because of political turbulence brought about by, dare I say it, Boris Johnson. So she has to accept the political reality of why Boris is no longer there. Everybody, supported Boris at some point and wanted it to succeed, but it didn't. 50 ministers resigned under his government. You can't just ignore that. And that's why Boris is no longer Prime Minister. And Liz Truss, we sort of know what happened. So best not go
Both of whom resigned with dignity, didn't they?
Indeed, yes. Accepting the reality.
They didn't write letters like this at all.
No, and of course you're absolutely right. They resigned. Nadine has accepted that she was to resign, but then didn't. And I think that's where, as time has passed, people have asked questions. Well, hold on, Nadine, what are you actually doing? And when you're, she said over the summer that she had 4 great caseworkers, and I've no doubt about that, who were doing all the hard work to respond to constituents' needs. But when the post bag,
what's she doing?
Well, quite. And where's she been? And she talked about a zombie parliament. She's not been to Parliament to turn up to take part in any of the debates.
No. She also says you hold the office of Prime Minister unelected without a single vote, not even from your own MPs. But we know that when it came to the leadership election, it was actually the MPs that backed Rishi Sunak.
Indeed, and that was part of the problem, I think, that Liz suffered, because when it came to the MP's ballot, you're absolutely right, Rishi topped that ballot, Liz came second, but she won on the members' vote. When there was a second leadership contest, obviously Penny Mordaunt was in second place, but Rishi Sunak was streets ahead with colleagues, that it was determined that it shouldn't go to the membership because Penny then withdrew, and that was the right thing to do, to offer political stability to the Conservative Party and to the country that just needed a Prime Minister to come in and deal with the economic shock that there was. And he's done that. And so there is a lot of credit there for the Prime Minister. I think most people will accept that. But I'm just very sad as a Conservative that the Dean has taken...
He's waving goodbye.
That's just we got that. Yeah, it looks like he's waving her off.
Yeah.
Do you think for the PM, for government, and indeed for her constituents, if you are a constituent, I'd love to hear from you, do you think they're just saying good riddance now? Because we've been waiting for 2 months for this.
Well, I think we'll wish her well.
She makes the point that she increased the majority in that seat from, I think, 5,000 or something to 25,000. What sort of by-election are we eventually going to see there? Which way is it going to go?
Well, I think the reality, I think it's all to play for, and I do think the Conservatives have an opportunity to hold that seat. But I can't help but point out that I think the last 2 months might have made that more difficult than what it should have been, because had she gone when she said she was 2 months ago, if it was a by-election at the same time where we had Uxbridge and South Ruislip and Somerton and Frome, it could have all happened at the same time. I think that would have saved the taxpayer a bit of bob. And, it all could have happened then, and it might have been an even better night for the Conservatives if we'd held on to Uxbridge in London and Mid Bedfordshire. That would have been a positive for the government. As it happens, Nadine has decided to hang on a bit longer and has now caused a by-election which will take place on its own. And I think the campaign will be dominated by the last 2 months of having the accusation of an absent MP by the Conservatives thrown to the constituents there. So it'll be a difficult choice, a more difficult choice than what it probably might have needed to be. But just on the point, if I may, about the increase in her majority, I'm sure that is down to a lot of hard work that Nadine's put into that constituency. But I also think it's on the back of, the Prime Ministers that you have. MPs do a lot of work for their constituencies, and they do have a personal rating. But I think when people back you and back the Conservative Party, they do it because of the government as well as the MP. So I think it's a bit rich to say that, Rishi and Theresa and David Cameron were all terrible Prime Ministers who she was complaining against, when actually I think people were voting for her because they were voting for those Prime Ministers also.
Yeah. It's a very good point. Thank you very much. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. What do you think?
Yeah, because she says, since you took office a year ago, the country is run by a zombie parliament where nothing meaningful has happened. Would you agree?
Do you know what? On the surface, it's a problem with this, I think, is that on the surface, people can go, yeah, well, nothing much has happened.
No.
There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, under the surface, if you like, to try and pull things back. Now, whether you agree that it's enough, that enough has happened, is another question. To claim that nothing has happened is nonsense.
And have you ever written a letter like that when you've exited a company or a job? I wonder how she feels. I wonder whether this gives her a feeling of satisfaction. Ultimately, isn't it the better thing to do is if you're leaving a job, is just sort of get the heck out with dignity?
You see, isn't it interesting that I've thought, and I bet we've all thought about writing this sort of letter at some point. Having read this one, I'm glad I didn't, because I think she ends up coming out of this looking terrible. Maybe that's just me.
It might sell her book, though, mightn't it? I wonder when the book's going to come out.
Yeah, but
whether she'll time it. Oh, no, she won't. It'll be pre-Christmas. It won't.
But isn't that trashy? To use your resignation letter to try and then line your own pockets, basically, that way. I mean, I find that a bit distasteful, because we're talking about the good of the country here, saying, you read more in my book.
But she really feels hard done by, doesn't she? Particularly by Rishi.
Because she's not in the House of Lords. Which, again, seems a bit, come on, who do you think you are?
Fair enough.
Maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Should we bring you up to date now with the rest of today's top stories? Donald Trump has raised nearly $20 million in donations in the past 3 weeks, and that is despite, or maybe even because of, his indictment in federal and state cases. The former president has raised over $7 million alone since he was booked on Thursday at the Atlanta jail. Mr. Trump denies, of course, all the charges filed against him.
The Prime Minister has announced that dangerous offenders who commit the most heinous of murders will face life behind bars with no chance of release. Under the government plans, the law will be changed so judges will be required to impose whole life orders on the most depraved killers, except in extremely limited circumstances.
And the Labour Party has attracted a surge of interest from big business ahead of its annual conference in October. This follows a pledge from the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to rule out any version of a wealth tax under a Labour government. The opposition said its latest figures show the number of attendees at its business forum has risen by 50% in a year, and that the increased corporate presence demonstrates that Labour is now the party of economic growth.
I don't know that that's true. to be perfectly honest. I don't think... They might be making some very good points. Businesses might be interested. To say that the increase in attendance shows that they are the party of economic growth isn't true, is it? It's a case of a lot of businesses saying it looks increasingly likely that they will form the next government, therefore we better listen to what they've got to say.
Exactly.
That's the
but
reality
we're going to be hearing an awful lot of electioneering jargon from now on, really, aren't we? All sorts of claims on all sides, I suspect.
Yeah. Oh, well. Now, back to this controversial issue, and it's not going anywhere. Spain's World Cup winning coach, Jorge Vilda, has criticised the suspended Football Federation president, Luis Rubiales. Sort of criticised him, calling them... He said, right, that kiss with Jenny Hermoso was inappropriate and unacceptable. But he also said it was a real fuss about nothing. It was real nonsense.
Exactly. I don't quite understand where he's coming from.
No.
And isn't he the one that the women particularly don't like? Yeah. Yesterday, Rubiales, who's the president, or was the president, of the Spanish Football Federation, was provisionally suspended by FIFA in the wake of the kiss, of course. And that's... I mean, it sort of completely eclipsed a wonderful moment, didn't it?
Really did. Anyway, of course, Hermoso has stressed that she did not consent to the kiss, which is, of course, opposite to what he said. He said he asked for her permission. Seems a little bit odd when you look at the
And the
footage.
Federation now says they're going to look into lies.
Yeah.
So who's saying what? What is the truth?
Yeah, amid all of this, of course, the women's coaching staff in Spain resigned en masse.
With the exception of that coach.
Of Jorge.
So he stayed, but he's saying things that seem to be a bit contradictory.
Makes no sense at all. The whole investigation is real nonsense, but what Rubiales did
was
wasn't
inappropriate,
right. So how can it be? You can't be both ways.
No, exactly.
It's just extraordinary. There's going to be no end to this till he goes.
Which one goes? Rubiales?
Both of them, I think.
Well, Rubiales is temporarily suspended, so they're obviously going to launch some sort of inquiry. And I almost dread to think of the pressure that's going to be put on the female players in that inquiry. It's not going to be very nice, is it, at all?
It's not going to be at all nice. But you look at... We had some interesting... vox pops, when we stop you in the street and interview you about it. And it was... and most people saying, no, it's terrible. One or two women saying, oh, well, I'm a bit torn on it, but I don't think it's right. But the bottom line is, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, it's not right. Really. Not something like that.
It was desperately inappropriate, but as Aidan was explaining yesterday, there's a backstory to this as well. There's a feeling of real misogyny in the whole coaching team and everything like that. So they really do need an inquiry, but we'll see. We'll wait.
Yeah. I mean, if the entire coaching staff, apart from the head coach, resigns, then there is a fundamental
then what's going
problem.
On? Yeah, there really is. And it's such a shame because those women won the World Cup. And yet this has all eclipsed it, hasn't it?
Totally.
Let us know what you think, of course, as usual. gbviews@gbnews.com.
You're not backwards in coming forwards, as we like to say, which is a good thing.
True.
Should we see what the weather's going to do for you today and into tomorrow? Here's Jonathan.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere, there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening, so a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland. But for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
I've just dug something else out of this letter.
Oh, yeah, what?
Right.
This is the resignation letter.
Nadine's.
It's 3 pages long.
She says, having witnessed firsthand as Boris Johnson and then Liz Truss were taken down, the British people have a right to know what's happening in their name. Why is it that we've had 5 Conservative Prime Ministers since 2010, with not one of the previous 4 having left office as the result of losing a general election? This is a democratic deficit. And that can be viewed as a perfectly valid point, apart from the fact she really backs Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson was, of course, part of the reason, with his resignation, amongst others, as to why Theresa May had to go.
Yes, but he did win an election.
Yes,
and a massive majority.
Yes, but he was part of the reason as to why Theresa May was
That's
booted out.
true.
Wasn't it? Because he undermined her over the whole Brexit thing. He can argue he was right to do so, but so she can't. How do you have it both ways?
It's just that whole letter is just bristling with rage, particularly about Boris, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every other point is more or less, you know, it's against Boris. She really, and yet Boris left without saying any of these things himself. He resigned with dignity. Has she sacrificed her dignity? I tell you what, she ends too many sentences with prepositions.
Does she?
Yeah. Her grammar is appalling. But there you are, I'm outraged for the wrong reason.
Yes, never end a sentence with a preposition.
Yeah. This clearly orchestrated and almost daily personal attack demonstrates the pitifully low level your government has descended to.
Yeah.
Lots of that. I find more. But grammar gets
They
you
have
sometimes,
agency,
doesn't it?
they will use it. Yeah, she's not right. Anyway, there you go, that's being pernickety, but it's all very, very odd and extremely unhelpful, I think, for the Prime Minister anyway. But maybe you think it's a good thing.
Maybe he'll just be sighing with relief, saying, well, she's had her say, and at last she's gone.
Yeah.
He'll probably look at it like that.
Yeah.
But do get in touch if you've ever written a letter like that. Love to hear your story.
Oh, yeah. Coming up, we've got an insight for you into a new summit on the safety of artificial intelligence. This is GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel,
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
6:29 now. President Biden is not expected to attend the Prime Minister's flagship artificial intelligence conference this autumn in what's being branded an utter embarrassment for Mr Sunak.
Yeah, I mean, other people are going. This is despite the Prime Minister hailing the so-called special relationship and making AI the centrepiece of his visit when he visited the White House in June.
So is it all going to be a flop before it starts? Andrew Eborn is, well, a technology lawyer doesn't quite do it. He knows his stuff when it comes to all of this.
Futurologist.
Futurologists have knowledge everywhere. Futurist is always good. And you're right, every single day there's some great stories about AI, and you get that sort of negative spin, don't you? Tomorrow,
does it matter that Biden?
No, it doesn't matter at all. Tomorrow is the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King and that great speech, I Had a Dream.
Tomorrow is?
It is, 60th anniversary. Well, I have a dream that we celebrate what the UK has achieved in AI. We punch way above our weight. We are world leaders. Basically, Google DeepMind was created here. We have about, 50,000...
Sorry, what's Google DeepMind?
So they do all this sort of chat and GPT, you've got AI and so on and so forth. So we are the pioneers in this space.
So why are we so frightened of it?
Well, we should be frightened. There are risks involved. And Stephen Hawking, he said it's our greatest human achievement, but also the existential threat. So it's quite appropriate that we have it at Bletchley Park, because the home of where they cracked the Enigma code, the home of Alan Turing, that brilliant mind who first sort of devised the test for AI to say, hang about, this is how you can work out if you're talking to a computer. Interestingly, you've now got CAPTCHA, as you know. Basically, that's the little thing when you say if you're a computer or not. You have to work out, pick out the bus stops, and which is really tricky. What I love is that this week they did a research that AI is better at doing CAPTCHA than humans are, so it defeats that sort of object.
I find that very annoying, that CAPTCHA thing.
It is annoying, and we're not very good at it. About 50% of the time we fail, but 85% AI gets it right, so it defeats the object.
Oh, now, so what have we seen in AI? That you talk about the excitement. A lot of us in the papers, it's all about, it's all doom and gloom. So what is it about AI which is worth pursuing, which makes us excited?
Let me give you, as I say, every single day is a great story. One particularly lovely story which we had this week is somebody called Anne, who's been paralysed for 18 years. And the only way she's been able to communicate beforehand is using her eyes, basically, to pick out words, which is a really long process. What they've done now, using AI, is to use her voice. They can synthesise it. They've created an avatar which looks like her. It can do, and basically map the brain waves directly from the brain, so they can get speeches, and it makes it in virtually real time. They can use facial expressions as well, because that part of the brain is really, really powerful. So somebody who is in a world of silence all of a sudden has the power through AI to do that. Also this week...
Hold on, through brainwaves?
Yes, basically, it's brainwaves. What they do, they basically connect to, you're going to love this, it connects to that part of the brain where you can normally, where speech would normally happen. It can, and also facial expressions. And what they do, they connect directly to that in an OK way. And what then happens, it can pick up those brainwaves.
But I'd be really worried about that. I mean, we're all sitting here thinking, I'm speaking,
yes,
but I'm probably thinking other things as well.
I can tell what you're thinking, Anne. I
might be thinking things I really wouldn't want you to know.
Oh, and it's going to get worse than that. It's going to be the best lie detector ever. We're going to be able to read your dreams in your night and to transcribe those as well. Great powers as well. I mean, also this week, I'm going to talk about another advance about Parkinson's. My good friends at Moorfields have basically said they can predict maybe 7 years earlier the likelihood that you might get Parkinson's, because they can do monitoring of the eyes. I've had this test, very, very simple, not very obtrusive sort of test, and they can turn around and say, well, hang on, we can predict these neurological advances.
So the longer you've got before anything starts, the more time they've got to...
Prevention is better than cure. Yeah. And every single day there are great stories.
That has to be true of dementia as well.
It is true of dementia, and cancers and so on and so forth. We will, the greatest achievements that we can do, we're going to solve diseases, we're going to basically harness all these sort of tremendous opportunities. What we need to look at are the positive stories. People should be scared, and we should make sure that things like hallucinations, where it makes it up, basically, you get that sort of side. And we don't want it to be completely automated, because that could be dangerous.
Yeah.
But it's not the fear of the machines, it's the fear of what humans might do with those machines. And that's what we need to regulate. So all praise to Rishi. Bletchley Park, we should celebrate that.
I mean,
and work
if there's
on that
one
principle.
reason that President Biden should come, it's just so he can see Bletchley.
Oh, I didn't love it, isn't it? And it's not far, it's just an hour from London,
Yeah.
Milton Keynes.
Wonderful.
And all praises, say, to Alan Turing, who back of a £50 note. You work on that sort of basis. I love it. Let's focus on the good.
The only £50 note I've seen, the new ones, it was one of yours.
Go on, you can have... I could do that. We work on that basis, because it is always about sort of Alan Turing. No, we've got loads of these. And that's what happens.
You better...
There you go. Alan Turing on the back of a £50 note. You can have that. We'll put it towards our lunch. We can celebrate in style.
Where's camera 2?
That is brilliant.
There you have a look at that.
Well,
There's Alan Turing.
And we should, whose differently wired brain, we should now celebrate, because he went through hell whilst he was alive.
He did,
and I think the fact that we now recognise him on our major currency, before that disappears altogether as well, is tremendous. And we should, when we remember November the 1st and November the 2nd, that's when we're going to have this AI summit, we want to make sure that we're front and centre of this. The UK should be championing this, not looking for negative stories. And I think that's the way to do it. And all praise to him.
You're going to be backing our Don't Kill Cash campaign then, Andrew.
But I absolutely.
Just very, very, very briefly, have you ever written a nasty resignation letter?
Well, I would get AI to do it, because I reckon it would come up with the best turn of phrase ever. And it wouldn't take 3 pages to do it either.
No, it's a very fair point. Andrew, good to see you.
Good to see you
Thank you very
both.
much indeed. Sarah says, I was asked several times to do an exit interview, which I declined. HR came to see me to find out why I declined that interview. My reply was, you haven't listened to me for 8 years. Why would you listen to me now?
Very good point. Yeah.
Very good.
She says exit interviews are another box-ticking exercise in a world gone mad. I think that's what it sounds like to me as well. And Gary says, morning Gary, always best not to slate your employer, as you will need a recommendation letter or a reference letter for your next employer.
Yes, that's a very fair point.
Well, Rishi Sunak won't be writing up.
Oh, yeah. Printed this morning.
It's very pretty, and it's lovely. It's the Queen on the other side as well.
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth, that is.
Ooh, very tempted not to let go of this ever. Coming up, we've got all the stories making the headlines in the papers. This is Breakfast.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne at 6:38.
Yeah. Nadine Dorris's letter, says Les in Kent. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm not with you. I'm not with you on that one.
Sally says Nadine Dorries just wanted her moment of glory because she didn't get it before. As you said, she was hanging on to see if she could get into the House of Lords.
Yeah, Paul, about resignations in general, says, I got sacked once, so I threw 2 cups of coffee over my boss. I was young and stupid, but I was treated unfairly, so I don't regret it.
Yeah. I hope it wasn't hot coffee, though.
No.
'Cause nowadays you'd be done for assault, wouldn't you?
Actually, you would be done for
Yeah.
assault. They could do you for that, couldn't they? I do... there was one... I worked one place once, and there was... Just behind the set, there was lots of cables. Everything was plugged in behind the set. And it was the running joke that said, if I ever leave here, I'm going to walk out in a commercial break, then popping to the loo and not coming back, and then unplug all these things, turn it all off, and take the channel off air for a while.
Oh.
Didn't do it, obviously.
No, that would have been quite satisfying, though, wouldn't it?
It would have been brilliant.
Have you ever made a wonderful exit? Love to hear. In our business, if you get the sack, or you're sort of politely asked to leave or told your contract is up, the bosses are terrified you're going to say something on air. Absolutely terrified. I never have, but other people have, haven't they?
Yeah. Sort of good.
Some famous cases.
Good on them, really. But anyway, maybe one day, Anne.
We do it jointly.
We'll do it jointly.
Walkout.
When we get told not to come back next week. Probably later on today. Anyway, let's go through the papers now in a bit more detail. We're in any detail at all with writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and HuffPost UK political editor Kevin Schofield.
Good morning to you both.
All right, let's have a look at The Observer, Emma.
Yeah, so this is the Prime Minister's links with, well, the India trade talks. So it comes ahead of the G20 summit next month in New Delhi. And famously, the Prime Minister's wife, Akshata Murthy, has quite a lot of wealth, staggering amounts of wealth, really, through her father in their big company, huge software company, Infosys, which is worth billions. And her shareholding is worth around 500 million.
Gosh.
She has lots of other business interests as well. So there are now concerns that this could represent a real conflict of interest, that the Prime Minister flying over to India, talking to Narendra Modi and talking to, various G20 and business movers and shakers out in India, in order to try and get a good UK-India trade deal, could represent a real conflict of interest.
Really?
Exactly. It's inevitable that Infosys are keen to get, well, one of the sort of sticking points, or one of the key issues they're keen to get is more visas for their contractors over here. That's an inevitable part of any close, successful trade deal. Infosys are a huge company. I mean, they've been going, I think the father founded it in 1981. As I say, they've made billions. It's inevitable. They're going to benefit from closer ties. Probably the UK is, probably India is. And I also don't think Rishi Sunak is a... he has failed to declare, he did recently fail to declare that she had an interest in a childcare company that could possibly benefit from government childcare policy. But I don't think he's massively hiding anything. I think he's been pretty open. He's had to be. He was forced to be pretty open about his wife's staggering wealth. So, this is, front page of The Observer sort of says it all, really.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? If it's a real conflict of interest, they'd try to be hiding it away somewhere.
Try to be hiding it away, and we want him there. We want him out of the G20, and I don't think he's tried to hide it. But there is concern across Labour, there is concern, in the highest levels of government, apparently, that, this could be, that they could benefit massively, financially, from a deal.
I think this is just Labour trying to stir the pot, isn't it? And, remind voters that Rishi Sunak is incredibly rich and his wife's very rich, and they think that that will benefit them come the next election. They'll paint him as out of touch, doesn't realise what ordinary people are going through, cost of living crisis, etc., etc. So it's just a way of keeping this in the headlines. There's talk of him having to recuse himself from the trade talks when they're discussing these particular days.
Well,
but,
maybe that's not going to make any difference, though, is it, to the end?
And it's not as if no one realises that his wife is incredibly wealthy. As I say, it's just they're trying to embarrass him. I don't really think it hits the mark, really.
And it's not the thing that's going to lose them, the general election?
No, I think it's already, as we say, priced in, isn't it, that he's very wealthy.
However, if you look at the Mail on Sunday, Kevin, there's a secret Labour plan to whack the motorist again.
Yeah, well, if you didn't know that there's an election coming, you certainly do now. This is, again, you talk about stirring the pot. This is, the Conservatives see this as something that is that Labour is vulnerable on when it comes to ULEZ, which people, even if you don't live in London, I think you probably know what the ultra-low emission zone. Now, what the Conservatives are trying to do is paint Labour as anti-car, anti-freedom, and now they've uncovered, the Mail and Sun have uncovered a Transport for London document which says that they're looking to recruit people to, quote, lead the way in introducing a new, more sophisticated type of road pricing. So they're saying that ULEZ is just one step along the road to banishing cars altogether, discouraging people from using their cars because...
But they're talking a pay per mile.
Well, yeah.
So if you make a long journey, you somehow pay more?
Pay more. The more you use your car, the more you would pay. But if you're not using your car very much, then you wouldn't pay. So it's, as you say, to
but that's a massive smash on those people who need to use their cars, like the tradesmen who are already saying they can't afford the ULEZ.
Absolutely, it would be. You're right. Now the thing is, this is something that politicians are going to have to grapple with at some stage because petrol and diesel cars are being phased out. Electric cars will become, in the future, will become the only cars on the road, which means that they will need to find a replacement for the current road tax.
Yeah. Why would you? But the argument around this must be around pollution and all these sort of issues. And if everything's going electric, then what's the point in introducing something which is going to be out of date in 6 years?
And can I just mention the front page of the Telegraph is also saying that this plan, hours after Kevin breaks it, has been scuppered. Sadiq Khan's plans for pay per mile could be scuppered under a new law that allows councils to opt out. So there's kind of a bit shaky
and
this
also,
idea that...
Yeah, and Labour have been... Well, Keir Starmer, they are terrified. I mean, they're miles in front in the polls. Anything that they think might help the Conservatives eat into that lead. So they've been very much... They've put pressure on Sadiq Khan to get rid of ULEZ. He's not going to do that. But they're saying we're not going to bring it in other parts of the country if Labour wins the next election. But there's also a classic denial, the very, very last... paragraph of the story. A spokesman for Mr Khan said the allegations are complete nonsense. Sadiq is crystal clear. A pay-per-mile scheme is not on the table and not on his agenda.
Oh.
So that rather...
So a storm in a teacup.
...kills the story.
And it would depend on the ULEZ cameras, which apparently 90% of them have been vandalised.
Yeah.
So if you're depending on that to film people doing their pay-per-mile, then, give up.
You might be struggling.
Yeah, but talk about this sort of electioneering. You can really feel it in the next story as well, Emma, in the Telegraph, about Rachel Reeves making it very clear that we are not going to introduce a wealth tax.
And you turning on everything she's said over the last 5 years. I mean, literally. But exactly as Kevin says, this is Labour wanting to preserve that 20-point lead, well, grow it, but wanting to hang on to that, wanting to just steady the ship and not upset anybody. So Rachel Reeves, Shadow Chancellor, has ruled out hitting bigger, wealthy, higher earners. She's ruling out higher taxes on expensive property. She's ruling out an increase in capital gains tax, an increase in income tax. And this is very much being seen as a bold bid for business, for wealthy households, to get that middle ground, to really secure that middle ground.
Well, because they're the ones who are particularly frightened of a Labour government.
Yeah, exactly. And also, the weakness in Labour has always been the sort of feeling that, well, the Conservatives, at least you get economic competence. It's going to be all about the economy, isn't it, as we go into the next election?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is straight out of the New Labour playbook, really, if you remember, before the 97 election, Gordon Brown and Tony Blair were very clear, we won't put up your taxes.
Yeah, we will be business friendly, we will love the city.
Absolutely, the pledge card, we won't put up your income tax, all this stuff. And, again, they see this as something that the Conservatives will try to beat them over the head with in the run-up to the election. Labour will put up taxes. Now, it's a little bit rich coming from the Conservatives, given how much they've put up taxes over the last 13 years. That being said, though, it makes sense, I guess, for Labour to come out and say, we won't put up taxes.
But what's it going to do to their base, if you like to use an American term? Yeah. They're declaring that additional taxation will not lead to prosperity, which is exactly what Jeremy Corbyn was getting his base going on. So, well, if you want prosperity, you need to tax the rich more.
You need to tax them until the pips squeak. You need to hit them where it hurts. And that makes sense to a lot of traditional Labour voters. It just does.
Yeah.
And this is Rachel Reeves. As I've said, you turning on all of the 2019 kind of hard left Corbyn policies. And she's sort of weakly saying, well, no, but we need to encourage private investment in Britain. Well, of course we do, but we need to do that anyway.
Yeah, I think the calculation is probably that their base, the left-wing Labour voters, have gone. Where else are they going to go? They might vote Green, they might vote Lib Dem, but it's not going to make much difference. They're going to, if they want to get rid of the Tories, they're going to have to vote Labour, and if it means having to suck up policies that they probably don't like, that they think are a little bit conservative, then they're just going to have to...
And Kevin, they can always change their mind when they're in power, can't they? They can always, you know...
The 2019 Conservative manifesto said they wouldn't put up income tax, wouldn't put up, but taxes have gone up.
Well, to be fair...
Because of the pandemic, obviously, to help pay for that.
Extenuating circumstances.
So, but when they say they need to raise 12 billion for the NHS, they'll say that, and then they'll have to find that money somehow, and then they'll have to, you know, once you're in power, you can do things differently.
They'll be paying per mile to pay.
Yes,
for
exactly.
that,
There you go. Another policy they could sneak in.
Electric cars.
Kevin, what's this about the hospital boss at the centre of the Lucy Letby scandal in the Sunday Mirror?
Yeah, so this is about Ian Harvey, who was the medical director at the Countess of Chester Hospital at the time when Lucy Letby was arrested in 2018. Now, he took early retirement shortly after her arrest.
Yes, he left about a month after she was arrested.
Absolutely, on a bumper pension, £1.8 million pension, lives now in the south of France, very happily with his wife. Now, the Sunday Mirror have spoken to the parents of of Lucy Letby's victims, who say that he must give evidence. He must be called back to give evidence to any public inquiry. Now, at the moment, there's a little bit of confusion as to the powers that this inquiry will have. The government's under pressure to make it statutory, which would mean that witnesses would be compelled to attend.
Why wouldn't he want to give evidence? Under something like that, you'd want to do everything you could to make sure this couldn't happen again, wouldn't you?
You would think so.
Well, yes, if nothing had gone wrong, but we know there have been a catalogue of failed opportunities. Of course he doesn't want to give evidence if he presided over a... And it wasn't just when she was arrested. We know now the timeline is sort of 12... Well, more than 12 months, going back, that concerns were raised, that action wasn't taken, that silly things like, oh, she's so nice, things like that were said.
But the whole thing with this is, of course things went wrong, and he was in charge at the time, so of course, I mean, that's the very reason to say, yeah, all right, we need to learn from this, this is what happened. That's why you'd want to do it for the good of humanity, almost, wouldn't you?
He hasn't said he's not going to.
No, although there is a quote in here from a former colleague of his who apparently, when he retired, they asked him whether he thought there could be a public inquiry into what happened, and he replied, they would have to find me first.
Oh.
So, you know, that would indicate that maybe he's not terribly keen.
They must make
come back. But something like that, if someone who was in such a senior position at the time, I think the public demand for him to give evidence would be overwhelming, I would have thought.
Absolutely.
And I think there's general fury as well, isn't there, particularly amongst the parents?
And disbelief.
At the fact that he is able to retire on such an incredibly cushy pension.
Yeah,
I mean,
nice.
massive.
A swimming pool and stables, apparently.
Yeah, very nice.
South of France.
Very nice.
Imagine retiring on a £1.8 million pension pot. Wouldn't that be nice?
Is that his pension pot, his annual pension?
A pension pot, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
it's still a lot of money.
That's top 1%.
Yeah. Is it?
Something like that. Oh, yeah.
Very nice indeed. OK, Kevin, Emma, thank you very much indeed. We'll catch you a little bit later on.
Now, motorists have been warned about new speed cameras equipped with AI, which have had a successful trial on roads in Devon and Cornwall.
Yeah, the new tech uses artificial intelligence to monitor more than just your speed. It can tell if you're on the phone, or, which you shouldn't be, and even whether or not you've got a seatbelt on, which, of course, you should have.
Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has more now on how these devices have resulted in record convictions.
You may have never seen one of the new-look AI speed cameras, but you soon will. After a trial in the West Country, they're heading to a road near you. Andrew Digmer from Road Angel Group says they bring road surveillance to a whole new level.
The difference with the new AI speed camera, it actually uses two cameras. One camera will get your speed reading and your ANPR for the prosecution side of things. The other camera looks directly into the cab of the vehicle to basically see with your if you're compliant with the rules of the road.
For the first time, cameras can check if motorists are on their phone or not wearing seatbelts. So far, they've caught hundreds. In the first 2 weeks alone, nearly 2,000 drivers were caught speeding. One of the cameras is recording driving offences 120 times a day, something that Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner says is concerning.
I can't say I'm pleased about that. You know, we've only had it running on a couple of roads where we've tested it out, and we've had over 1,500 offences already. You know, within 2 weeks. I mean, that's not great. I think for us, you know, it shows how much education on the roads is required.
But of course, the scheme does have its critics. There are some that say that a camera that looks into your car can invade your privacy. Others say that this is another cash cow for the police. But Devon and Cornwall Police have a target. They want to halve road deaths by 2040 and to eliminate them altogether by 2050. And for that, they need technology.
Only technology is going to actually make this difference. If we get to the point of driverless cars and you can't speed and all those things, but you have to do a breathalyzer before you get in the car, before it'll start, technology will be the ultimate solution. But until we get to that point, we've got quite a lot of ways that we can really help our community understand what it is they need to be doing now, because the technology isn't there to support them at the moment.
But that technology is coming. Every day, 5 people die on our roads and 84 are seriously injured. It's hoped these new cameras will go some way towards bringing that number down and bringing us a step closer to a day when no one dies on our roads at all. Jeff Moody, GB News.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's sort of frightening, but sort of... I mean, you should be wearing a seatbelt. You shouldn't be texting on the road.
If it saves lives, it's good.
Yeah, well...
What about your privacy?
Yeah, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Here's your weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere, there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening. So a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Where would you staycation if that's what you're going to go for? Pat says North Norfolk, Old Hunstanton. Go there in May every year and it's glorious. Clean beaches, delicious fresh seafood, and it lives up to its reputation as sunny honey. I like that. Old Hunstanton. What's not to like?
Sunny honey. Sounds good.
It does, doesn't it?
If you're going to quit today, let us know what you're going to put in your resignation letter. We'll bring you all the fallout from Nadine Dorris's shock, well, not really shock, resignation, very shortly. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 27th of August. Today, Nadine Dorries finally quits. The Conservative MP and former minister has now resigned and accused the Prime Minister of endangering her safety by whipping up a public frenzy.
FIFA has suspended the Spanish Football Federation president, Luis Rubiales, over that infamous World Cup kiss. The federation instead says it's going to take legal action against what they call lies.
We're going to be heading to Wales later as many people choose the nation as their favourite destination for a staycation. But we want to know, what would be your choice?
And Jonathan from the Met Office has your weather.
A mixed bag of weather today. Some sunshine, but also showers and drizzly rain for others. Join me later to find out what you will be experiencing.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Diggs.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Andrew Reborn was here earlier, waving about £50 notes.
That's what he was, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's showing us Alan Turing on the back of it. But Neil in Morecambe's been in touch. Have we met Neil? I think we must have done. He said, typical Barrow lad, Stephen, not going to hand that £50 back willingly. No, I had to prise it from my hands.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Not many people carry £50 notes, do they? I haven't had one for eons.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a tenner in your wallet. Not that of course, we are very pro-cash on GB News, aren't we? But I was going to say, I don't usually use much cash anyway. But a £50 note?
Yeah.
I mean, some places won't take them because it requires a lot of change, usually, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but still. Yeah, Diana says that. Reminds me of the first one I had in my wage packet in Bennett's Hill, Birmingham. I've loved them ever since.
Oh,
but
yeah,
what's
well, I
not
like
to
them.
love?
Yeah.
So many places refuse to take them in payment these days, which is a shame. Which is true.
Have you ever been sacked and had your own back or whatever? Dave says, I was sacked and I left the building doing the Morecambe and Wise leaving dance. You know, the one where they skip and they... Yeah, that's right, yeah. It brought all the staff into fits of laughter. That's one way to go, isn't it?
Yeah. Maggie says, when feeling frustrated with my employers to the brink of resignation, I always remembered a little saying, the hardest thing in life to learn, which bridge to cross and which to burn.
Yeah.
Saved me from sending many an email venting my spleen.
Yeah.
Very good advice.
It is very good. The hardest thing in life to learn, which bridge to cross and which to burn. We should all... And I think nowadays you also have to sort of keep reminding yourself, you're lucky to have a job.
Yeah,
you may not like it, and you may have, horrible bosses and all the rest of it, but you think very carefully before you write the sort of resignation letter that you can't undo.
Yes, like Nadine Dorries has done. Formally resigning from the House of Commons, eventually resigning after more than 2 months after pledging to stand down with immediate effect.
Yeah, the former Culture Secretary and staunch ally of Boris Johnson used her resignation letter to really attack the Prime Minister. She has accused him of abandoning Conservative principles, and that's just the nice bit.
Yes, let's talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who joins us now. I mean, she really has burnt her bridges, hasn't she?
Well, she really has. Of course, she's a novelist. She got a book out next month about the so-called plot to bring down Boris Johnson. This is 1,800 words of invective, of self-justificatory remarks about her time in office. She's MP for Mid Bedfordshire for 18 years. She signalled publicly she was going to go early this summer, but in fact, she told Simon Case, she reveals here, the cabinet secretary, she was going back in 2022. She's furious. I mean, she completely takes apart personally the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. She talks about his gleaming shoes, his Savile Row suit, or a gleaming smile. She says he has that impresses chief executives. She asks why, and a good question, why have we had 5 Tory prime ministers with not one of the previous 4 having left office after losing a general election? I mean, that's a great essay question on this. I mean, she really does take apart both the PM personally and also his record, levelling up, discarded. She says the Windsor Framework Agreement in Northern Ireland, a dead duck, she says. And she tries to drive a wedge between Jeremy Hunt, which is no one has done yet satisfactorily. She says that that the PM has been disregarding his own chancellor and taking credit for reducing inflation. It's quite extraordinary. It's August, so Parliament's not back for about 10 more days. But all the opponents for the Tory party will be leaping on these words to use against the PM and the Tories when they're back in Parliament.
But hasn't she got a bit of a nerve, Christopher? When, I mean, as you mentioned there, this whole business of no Conservative Prime Minister since 2010. Well, none of the previous 4 have left office as a result of losing a general election. Yes. Yeah, but I mean, certainly when it comes to Theresa May, that was partly down to her hero, Boris Johnson.
Well, exactly. I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, you could quote Ravi Burns to have the wisdom of how see you as others see you, because quite clearly, yes, she was part of that group around Boris Johnson who brought her guy in. The Tory party, ever since really 2016, has been trying to find an answer to who should lead the country and failed to. And as she said, remove leaders like this. Yes, totally. But it is a... What can you say? Yes, but it's all eyes now on the by-election. We expect it to be around the time of the Tory party conference. The numbers are, there's been one poll in Mid Bedfordshire back in the middle of last month, put Labour on 28 points, the Tories on 24 points. Reform Party, this rather more right-wing minority party, on 10 points. That says to me that if Sunak can try and find a way to try and give some hope to Tory party members, give some idea, show some leg on tax cuts, or give an idea of why to vote Conservative again, he could eat into that reform lead and actually win the seat. So it's not entirely all lost, but the timing of this will be very, very difficult, just really shortly after the Tory party conference, we expect.
It's very unedifying, isn't it, for Rishi Sunak, for instance, if he's trying to present a united front, things are getting better, to have a former minister saying things like, since you took office a year ago, the country is run by a zombie parliament where nothing meaningful has happened. It is pretty embarrassing that. She's absolutely giving the Labour press tomorrow's headline, isn't she?
Well, that's right, Anne. It is really embarrassing. I think she has got a slight point, and I hang around in Parliament a lot. Not much is happening. MPs do go home early. It's not Nadine Dorries telling me that it's a zombie Parliament. Other MPs say the same thing. They wonder where the big idea is. Why can't the government do more? Of course, the problem is they appear quite scared of losing any votes. So any big rebellion, they suddenly withdraw and don't go to vote. It is odd. It does feel like a government clinging on half the time, although it isn't and shouldn't be. The hope for the Tory party is they're going to reshuffle at the end of this coming week on Friday, a small reshuffle at the top of government, and give it more energy and get an idea of. I'm really almost convinced the country, you and me and everyone else, why this party should be given the right to run the government after the next election, expected now next year. The reaction of Tory MPs to this hasn't been very great. MPs telling me good riddance. She was certainly a loner as an MP. She did her own thing. She went on, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, don't forget, all those years ago, and got the whip suspended from her by David Cameron at the time. So she's someone who I think is an admirable fighter, a kind of working class Tory MP, but she does rub people up the wrong way.
OK, Christopher, thanks very much indeed. Charlie Rowley's here in the studio, former special advisor to Michael Gove. I'm intrigued by our views, Charlie, on this one, because it's pretty split. William says, whilst not diplomatic, the letter is a breath of fresh air on the political honesty scale.
Yeah, Ian says the same thing. Well done, Nadine. Be your true self and not be two-faced. But after 50 years of voting Tory, I never will again.
But Jane says the Tory party would do well to award her disloyalty by removing her completely. She's done a brilliant job underscoring her lack of intelligence and integrity. Good riddance. What do you make of it all?
Well, I mean, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, I suppose. But I think in some of those responses to your viewers, I think this isn't necessarily, this is Nadine's view, and it is only Nadine's view. I don't think it, when you get into all of the contents of the letter, I don't think it adds up. I think, being in politics and being a member of Parliament is a huge privilege, and you've got to exercise judgment all of the time. And I think hanging around for 2 months, having said that you were going to resign, leaving your constituents out in the cold as to what you were doing over summer, coupled with this letter, which I think is incredibly disingenuous to the Prime Minister and to her whole Conservative team. And I think it shows just the lack of judgment on Nadine's part here, which is why I think, she's decided to go, and I think the Conservative Party will get on with it and not waste too much time worrying about Nadine Dorries hereafter.
Yeah, I mean, it's very self-serving as well when you think of it. Chris Hope there said that her book is going to be coming out next month. And then it will coincide both with the by-election and then the Conservative conference. I mean, she's really going to knock them when they don't need it.
Exactly, and at a time where during Conservative Party conference, I mean, I feel sorry for Nadine in a way that this is the approach that she's taken, because she is isolated, as Chris was absolutely right to say, and maybe because she feels so isolated that she's had to sort of, punch out in this way. But at a time where Conservative Party conference will naturally just bring everybody together, where everybody looks for hope and optimism and will want to, and they will get that, you will have Nadine still sort of sniping from the sidelines. It's something that actually will unite the party even more, I think, when it clearly is something that Nadine, she seems to have a few problems with. So I do feel sorry for her in that respect.
I do find it very odd when, and I know it happens, but the idea that someone who is a working class Conservative, who is calling for the government to be more Conservative, seems to be doing everything she can to make sure that Labour win her seat and that Labour win the next election.
Which you would have thought, as a team player, as someone that is a Conservative and someone that, again, as Chris was saying, and you were just identifying there from, working class background, the lass from Liverpool, has done well in the Tory party, has got to the cabinet, to become a cabinet minister, has sat around the table making huge decisions for the whole of the country, has now had to sort of leave in this way. But she's always been, I think, slightly on the fringes. She's always been very vocal and critical of prime ministers.
Isn't she known amongst her circle as Mad Nad?
I had heard.
She's sort of proving it this time, isn't she?
And you can see why, because, it is a totally disingenuous letter, if I might say, to the Prime Minister, saying that he hasn't achieved anything. This is a guy who, has got a list of achievements, frankly, when he was Chancellor, stepping in to, protect people's jobs and their wages during furlough, after a tumultuous political period. Which...
Although she lists them. She says levelling up has been discarded, and the online safety bill watered down, BBC funding reform, the clock rundown, the Mental Health Act timed out, defence spending reduced, our commitment to net zero abandoned. She lists those things and she's right there, isn't she?
Well, what she fails to sort of say is that, he was a chancellor that stepped in during COVID to protect people's jobs. He got the Windsor framework through, which has united the party and put an end to the Brexit divides that were taking place within the country. Inflation is coming down. That is something that both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and the whole Conservative team can absolutely sort of support and champion and recognise, because it is reducing inflation, making sure that people feel the benefit of the pound in their pocket. That's what's going to provide levelling up and make sure that there is the regional equality that we have in this country. So there's a lot of things that Rishi Sunak has done, which I think Nadine doesn't want to recognise because of her personal issues, and I'm sad that it is those personal problems that she's had with Rishi Sunak that she's brought out in this letter, and I think that will be something that just leaves a nasty taste in her mouth hereafter.
But she wants this to resonate. I've got that on the brain, haven't I? She wants this to resonate.
We've all wanted to resonate for some time.
She wants this to resonate. Shut up. With Tory voters around the country, doesn't she? But highlighting things like net zero is not actually going to do her any favours in that sense, because you get the sense certainly from people we hear from, that actually net zero is what they want to see the back end of.
And I think taking on certain issues to perpetuate her cause rather than actually deal with exactly, as you say, the substance of net zero, which is something which I think the government has actually taken the right approach on. It's about being pragmatic and balanced when you say, look, you know, there's a cost of living crisis in this country, so things that are going to impact on people's pockets more is something that we can look at in the future, but let's obviously keep net zero in mind for the long term. So when it comes to 2050 or 2030, getting rid of petrol and diesel vehicles, I think that's long enough in the future for people to be able to adapt to that.
But, you know, you're saying that better than the government says it, though. They just don't say that, do they? They should.
Well, that's very kind of you.
They should explain it. Well, I always think, you know, if you're going to do a U-turn on policy or you're going to sort of abandon a policy, you need to tell us why, because there will be a good reason, should be anyway. And I think, you know, credit us with enough intelligence to understand that.
Well, and I think that's why, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why the ULEZ expansion, I don't want to go on too much about that, has really impacted on people, because it's coming in at the end of this month, where people have had no time to adapt. And these are hard-working people that rely on their vehicles for work, and they're just being slapped with a £12.50 penalty charge, effectively. So, you know, you've got to make sure that there is the explanation and the pragmatic sort of politics there as well. But you're absolutely right, Anne, and it sort of plays into, you know, the communication of government is one thing, but I think the government is getting that right, and the communication from Nadine Dorries here is just all wrong.
Graham says, morning, Graham, she was an awful minister and did not deserve to go to the Lords. Thank goodness she's gone. Her resignation letter just shows her as bitter and nasty. And Philip says, another high-profile Conservative has resigned. I can only hope a new political party will emerge soon.
Yes, I mean, there's a real split there. The one thing I have to say, I mean, what does it for me, and I know it's harking back to old stuff, but I mean, she has a go, as we've said, Prada shoes and Savile Row suit.
Yeah.
She's mentioned all this sort of stuff before, whilst swanning up to Downing Street in £6,000 diamond earrings. So it's like, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, isn't it?
I think so, and she's made comments like this before, as we've talked about, and as Chris said again, you know, saying to George Osborne and David Cameron, two posh boys that don't know the price of the milk. It's quite personal, because the reality is, I think the public can actually, again, go back to your point now, I think people are intelligent enough to know and not really take into account whether somebody's got personal wealth or not. People don't judge people by their personal wealth or their upbringing.
Was a
quite a wealthy man, yes.
Quite a wealthy, and went to Eton and all the rest of it.
Exactly,
yeah.
And so people...
It was a silly point, wasn't it? A silly thing to say.
I think so, and it just shows probably the lack of judgment on Nadine's part, and where this is a personal bugbear that she's been having for so long. She's put that out in her letter. But I think people will always judge the government. They'll judge Rishi Sunak by the decisions that he takes and the decisions that he makes as Prime Minister and what his government takes. And that's what matters to people. And that's where people generally want to have the debate around. They're not worried about the colour of their hair, what kind of shoes they wear, or anything like that.
Yeah.
I wonder if she feels satisfied, though.
I don't know.
She must have felt a sense of satisfaction as she was writing it, I can imagine. But now, in the cold light of the next morning...
Yes, a bit of regret.
I wonder what she feels.
Charlie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. It's just with that, and I know you read it before, but William, who said, you know... I read it before. It's a breath of fresh air on the political honesty scale.
Quite a few people have pointed that out.
I don't think it is. See, I don't think it's political honesty. I think it's self-serving in that sense. Political honesty requires you, I would suggest, requires you to look at the broader picture, which she hasn't done there. I think she's basically sounds bitter because she didn't get her seat in the House of Lords.
It's a teaser for her book as well, isn't it?
It's a teaser for her book.
But have you ever done anything like that? Have you ever left a job or been sacked from a job and then had your say, written a stinking resignation letter or said something that makes you feel better at the moment, but maybe you regret later? I don't know. They always think that it's a very good thing to, even if you feel completely miffed, is to leave with dignity, with your dignity intact, and show others that sort of respect. But I'd love to hear your story anyway. We'd love to. gbviews@gbnews.com.
I think it's the best way to do it. And revenge is a dish best served cold. That saying is there.
You always end up looking petty, I think, if you have your say and say something nasty. Or I think you end up looking petty.
I think this is petty. I mean, that's
3 pages long.
Yeah, that is a personal view. You may well disagree with it, but that's what I think. Because we've all been tempted to do it, and most of us don't. And I think there's a good reason for that.
A bit like the Harry and Meghan interview with Oprah, isn't it?
Yeah.
You leave an organisation and then you say something nasty about it. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel right.
No. Anyway, let us know what you think.
Yeah, in the usual way.
And let us know what you think about this one as well. Spain's World Cup winning coach, and he's controversial in himself, Jorge Vilda, has criticised... this is where it gets confused, right? He's criticised the president of the Football Federation, Luis Rubiales, saying the moment he kissed the squad member Jenny Hermoso was inappropriate and unacceptable. But he also said that the investigation into all of this was real nonsense. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, and it's odd that he's been the one who stayed on. Because yesterday, Rubiales, who was the president of the Spanish Football Federation, he was provisionally suspended by FIFA because of that kiss. When he grabbed Jenny Hermoso, so forcibly looking anyway. But, of course, he has an entirely different view of the matter.
Yeah, she stressed on Friday that she didn't consent to the kiss. And then yesterday afternoon, the Spanish women's coaching staff resigned en masse, with the exception of Jorge Vilda.
And yet, as from what we hear, Jorge Vilda, the coach, is one of the people that the women really don't like. And there are some very funny stories about him being very, very controlling. And didn't we also have somebody who said...
Oh, yes, there it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, John, Morning John, says, has anyone asked his wife what she thinks of the kiss? Because I know what my wife does if she caught me kissing some woman like that. I'd be for the chop.
Yeah.
He clearly has no respect for women.
Well,
checked.
He's divorced. He's got 3 children. He's divorced.
He's got 3 daughters.
3 daughters, yeah. But we're not going to make any suppositions as to why he's divorced.
Oh, gosh, no.
No. But no, so he's not married at the moment. So there you go.
But you can still be the father of 3 daughters and still be a chauvinist pig, can't you? I mean, I just don't like the look of him. I don't like what he did with the crotch grabbing and all the rest of it. But what is very, very peculiar is that there are 2, as the Queen would say, recollections may vary. And and there are pictures, of course, but even they're quite difficult to interpret, aren't they?
Well, they are. And the problem is those sort of still images, and even the video, actually, because, I mean, that kiss is all very brief and all the rest of it, and he does go around kissing all the girls, but he kisses everybody else on the cheek. That's the thing. Everyone else he kisses on the cheek, which is, you would say, is acceptable, especially in a country like Spain, where everyone kisses everyone on the cheek. But then with her, it's the full-on head grab.
And the crotch grab just showed me what sort of a man I think he is, anyway. But there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, keep your thoughts.
I mean, on the
through.
public stage, on the world stage, it wasn't appropriate.
You wouldn't really do that at home, would you?
No, exactly.
To be honest.
Exactly.
If one of your boys did that at home when they saw a goal go in or something, you'd be telling them off.
I would, yeah. That's what I mean. It was horrible, thuggish behaviour.
Anyway, there you go. That is rumbling on. We'll keep you fully up to date with that. And to keep you up to date with the weather today, here's Jonathan.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vortry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere, there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening, so a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland. But for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
I hate CrossFit. I will. Plenty more to come for you this morning. We're going to look into those recent thefts from the British Museum, which sounds like something from a movie, doesn't it?
They will make a movie about it, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll bring you all the details on that. This is GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel, sort of find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
"7:28. Good morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, let's talk about those mysterious disappearances at the British Museum, because the chairman of the British Museum, one George Osborne, says they've started to recover some of the missing items.
About time. He's also promised to clean up the mess after the resignation of the director, Hartwig Fischer, who's now facing calls to hand back a 5-figure bonus that he got.
Gosh, you learn about these jobs, don't you? Joining us now is Dr. Philip Kisley, who's cultural historian at the University of Leeds and senior fellow at New Culture Forum. A very good morning to you. I mean, what do you make of this? It's staggering what's happened at the British Museum, isn't it?
Well, first of all, good morning to you both. Yes, it is. I'm smiling, but it's a very ironic smile. 2,000 artifacts, some of which are from 15th century BC. These are priceless, and they're priceless in terms of scholarship as well. And yet they've just disappeared. George Osborne calls it a mess. And he's right, but he says he's going to clear it up. I don't think he can do. I think the museum's reputation is in tatters. There was an internal investigation in 2021. That was Dr. Williams, Jonathan Williams, which was Dr. Fisher's deputy, and nothing happened. You know, all of these things were going missing, coming in the front door, going out the back. Nothing happened. And it speaks to me of systemic mismanagement, really. I think it's just very sad. And the repercussions are going to be dreadful for us, for the institution, but for the culture as well.
I mean, it raises questions about how this stuff is catalogued and stored, because obviously, I mean, these aren't, one would presume, aren't exhibits that have gone missing, but sort of stuff in the back room. But also the idea that they were told that this stuff was appearing on eBay and still dismissed it.
I mean, it's difficult to know what to say in the face of such complete and utter foolishness. You know, I've called it mismanagement. I've called it systemic mismanagement. I think it's something more than just this one organisation. Okay, if you look across the culture, if you look at what's happening in schools, teachers are encouraging children to identify as cats. If we look at the tragedy that just happened in the NHS and all of the headlines last week, there's something deeply wrong about the way we manage, the way we curate, the way we understand our culture. Something just isn't happening the way it should do. And we need a complete overhaul. We need to re-understand who we are and what we are. You can't help but think with some of this stuff that the people working in the institution actually dislike our culture. I'm thinking about the 2021 ridiculous scandal about, well, I call it a scandal, about the word mummy. This not 2021, January this year, I should say. They actually stopped using the word mummy because they thought it might be, one, offensive to people who died 3,000 years ago, but also it had connotations of the British Empire, and there's something there. They dislike what they're handling. They're handling it, you know, holding their noses, and they're actually failing to catalogue half of it because they dislike
that. What were they suggesting that mummies should be referred to as then?
Mummified persons.
Oh. Crumbs.
Heaven's sakes.
But surely this comes down again to the way we pay and then don't hold accountable our management systems. I mean, in a number of the cases you've just mentioned there, you can't help but think it's bad management. And these people are often, in many cases, allowed to retire or stand down with huge pension pots, massive, golden handshakes, and they just walk away from a mess. Is there something wrong about the way we train our managers?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think it's the day-to-day implementation of how we go about looking after these priceless artifacts. It's that Burkean thing. These things are handed down to us. It's our responsibility to take care of them. I'm talking about us as a culture here. Our responsibility to take care of them and then hand them on to the next generation. Now, that isn't happening. Because we are just not taking care of them. But there's something strategic as well. There's something, as I said before, we dislike the culture. There's a sense that the people who are custodians really dislike what they're supposed to be looking after.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
It's a really interesting. Yeah. It's a really interesting point. I mean, I know it's like a bit of an odd analogy, Philip. But do we need to treat museums a bit like we now treat zoos? Because zoos were very much frowned upon, weren't they, as animals in cages? Where now they're seen very much as these almost like nature is they're protecting this wildlife. And there may be questions about how we get some of this material that is in museums, how it was done donkeys years ago, but it now just has to be protected and preserved.
Yeah, I think curation's always an evolving thing. I think we always have to reevaluate, the artifacts in our care. But I think the idea of the institution, the idea of our culture and how we look at our culture, needs to be something that's sacred to us. And just at the moment, I don't feel as though it is. So I've got a cat here.
That's all right.
We recognise that.
Here. He's had his breakfast.
Well, look, that is a perfect way to end any interview.
It is.
Philip, to be perfectly honest, with a cat making an appearance. Quite right, too. Do you know what? Really good to talk to you this morning.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Thank you very much indeed. I was not expecting that interview to be as interesting as it was.
Thoughtful, thought-provoking, yeah. And it's very sad to hear that somebody like him is so worried that we're not protecting our heritage properly. And we're not respecting it enough.
People in charge of all of this aren't giving it the right care and attention.
It's also questionable, isn't it? I mean, I know everybody has said this since this story first came out, that so many museums have thousands and thousands and thousands of artefacts in the basement, never shown off, in drawers, and by the sound of it, not even sort of catalogued properly. Every museum has it, we know, and that in itself is wrong, isn't it? I mean, for what purpose do we bury these things in?
I suppose some of them may not be particularly interesting to your average
to display,
visitor.
Yeah.
But then they're still being there because they still have historic and cultural significance.
But a place like the British Museum has always often been accused of being very arrogant in its attitude to other countries' museums, saying, no, you can't have your marbles back or your statues back because you don't know how to look after them as well as we do. And then suddenly you find them popping up on eBay.
For 40 quid?
It's worth having a look, see if you can find the odd Ming vase and go for it.
Because as I said yesterday, Antiques Roadshow.
Yes, that's
Here we come.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, good that George Osborne has said that they will get to the bottom of it, but they need to fast, don't they?
Yes, I don't know if I quite believe
We still don't know who to blame, do we? We don't know what's going on, really.
No.
It's all very mysterious.
It is, but as we say, also an excellent movie. For some point in the future, no doubt starring Tom Hanks, because he always seems to do.
Yes, he'd be good at that.
He would, yeah. Now, we've got the papers, have we? Coming up in just a few minutes? Yes, excellent.
Stay
so
with
don't
us.
go anywhere.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty,
but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio, and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant would be great. My superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in
prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
"7:40 morning, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
So let's bring you up to date with today's newspapers, having a look at the front pages. There's the Times there. Letby police fear that she attacked 30 more babies. That story's going to run and run, isn't it?
Yeah, let's see what we've got next for you then. The Express, Rishi Sunak has given them an interview, announcing a life means life crackdown for what they're calling the vilest killers. Quite how you define that?
No, exactly.
Legally, I don't know.
Meaningless. Life should mean life anyway, shouldn't it? Let's have a look at the next one. Sunday Times, reporting on a damning email that told of chaos on Letby ward.
Daily Star Sunday says, put your little Johns away.
That's about naked ramblers in Sherwood Forest, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
Obviously with a Robin Hood twist.
Yes.
Why not? But anyway, there you go. You never know what you might see if you head down to the woods today. You're sure of a big surprise. Let's see what writer and journalist Emma Wolfe make with that alongside HuffPost UK political editor Kevin Schofield. Good morning. Let's have a look at another data hack in The Sun on Sunday, Emma.
This is very concerning. Front page of The Sun is talking about this hack of an IT contractor who works for the Met Police. 47,000 personnel at the Met Police have been warned there's a risk that their photographs, their names and their ranks have been stolen by a hack into an IT system of a contractor who was printing out warrant cards and staff passes.
So, I mean,
potentially very serious.
Well, it raises the concern, amongst other things, that whoever has this can start printing out warrant cards.
And passes.
And pass it, and then start
vetting ID.
I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And you'd imagine it'd be quite a valuable commodity on the black market.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
very
if you're
much so.
a criminal, having a policeman's warrant card would be quite handy.
But what's going on when we outsource such an incredibly important thing to a company that presumably could be breached?
That can't guarantee the security. Exactly. Well, the National Crime Agency have been called in, and there are, exactly as Kevin says, concerns about terrorists and organised crime gangs using this very sensitive data. The Met Police have told staff, they've sent out a message telling their staff to remain vigilant. There is no suggestion that personal information, addresses, financial details have been included in that. And this is not a hack directly into the Met Police database. But as you say, it's effectively the same thing. If you contract this stuff out, you need the subcontractors to be absolutely secure.
Spot on.
And this comes after a very serious breach of security in Northern Ireland, an IT security breach in Northern Ireland.
It's very odd.
So
Again,
it's a
with
worrying
police.
time for the.
Do we know who's hacked it? Who's who's responsible for the hack?
I don't think so, but I think what it shows, a lot of people are very concerned about giving their personal details online because they think it could become, exposed to nefarious actors. And this shows that even the police aren't.
No.
And we were talking about emphasis in India, but why are we so bad in this country at big IT infrastructure projects? Why is it such a problem to do that and to do it securely?
Yeah, don't know. I do not know. Let's have a look at the Sunday Express, which is sticking with crime, Kevin. But it's the Prime Minister saying life will mean life for the vilest of killers. This, on the surface, you go, yeah, what a great idea. This concerns me in that, where's the definition?
Well, so what they're saying is it would be killings that involve sexual or sadistic conduct.
Well, sadistic conduct...
And I guess that would be in the eyes of the courts and the judge as to whether it met that.
There just seems to be too much interpretation in this. And I know a lot of you will be going, no, this is obviously the right thing to do. But how these things... It's the unintended consequences.
Well, yeah, and people might think, well, hang on, the Conservatives have been in power for 13 years. Why is it only taking them till now? Now, the answer to that, I think, is that there's an election round the corner. The Tories are miles behind Labour.
Lucy
Letby during the week, obviously.
So it's a knee-jerk response?
Well, I mean...
Sort of feels like it, doesn't it?
It feels like a little bit. The timing is slightly odd, given that we've just had a very high-profile case of life meaning life.
Yeah, exactly.
So it almost sounds like they're chasing a headline.
And isn't it already in the judge's discretion, anyhow?
Well, yeah, it can still be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have obviously sentencing guidelines, but as we found with Lucy Letby, if the judge decides that the nature of the crime merits it, then they can obviously impose a whole life sentence.
So it's Rishi Sunak stating the blimmin' obvious, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but again, as I say, this is obviously trying to throw a bit of red meat, not just to his backbenches, but trying to remind voters that, the Tories are supposed to be the party
of law and order.
But even though the Express have given it a splash, on down the side of the page, though, they've got Nadine Dorris. Now, this was obviously the story that Downing Street wanted in the Sunday papers. There's quite a few of them. But it was overshadowed last night, I think, by Nadine Dorris. So even when they try to get on the front foot, something comes along to blindside them.
I tell you what I don't like in this. I'm sorry to have a go. But the Prime Minister says, this is personal, I have two daughters.
Yes.
Well, what's that got to do with anything?
And he talks about the safety of women and girls on the streets and things like that. You know what? Plenty of people who don't have children or don't have daughters care about crime and care about vile killers and life meaning life.
Yeah. I'd be happier leaving it in the hands of judges.
Exactly.
Yes,
who've
absolutely.
heard the cases and all the rest of it, rather than politicians
Who've got
legislating
young
over
daughters.
It.
The idea
who've
is that
got
if he had
daughters.
two sons, he wouldn't be bothered. I mean, obviously, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a silly thing to say.
Why mention?
Yeah.
Go on then. So whenever the universities, 3-day working weeks sound great, but not for students.
Well, this is universities. They're introducing a sort of compact timetable so that to enable students in the cost of living crisis with all sorts of financial hardship to work. They are reducing the amount of time, so now around half of students, it was around 30%, then it was gone up to about 40% last year, over half of students do work alongside studying. Well, I think this is a brilliant idea. What's wrong with that? I worked all through... Me. I worked all through university with part-time jobs, and I had a heavy university schedule because we had lots of essays and lots of contact time. Many universities don't have... They have maybe 2 lectures a week. So what they're trying to do is compact it so that people can sort of travel can be easier, problems with accommodation can be alleviated. There are lots of problems, pressures on students at the moment. Look, no one wants students to be in debt. No one wants students to be struggling massively financially, but I don't see the problem with working alongside studying.
Yeah, well, no, and I'm with you on that. I'll tell you what gripes me a little bit on this, is they're saying we want to reduce the pressures on students. Well, why not compact your degree into 2 years, which is what they do at the University of Buckingham, which is the only private university in the UK. And they do it all in 2 years. They have shorter holidays and all the rest of it, which would then reduce...
Very successfully, too.
Could do, but I think university... But the reason I want people to work and live and study and do apprenticeships and do placements and things like that, the reason I think that makes sense is because I think for university, more than an academic degree that you come out with, I think it's a life experience. I think that you know, 3 years is a valuable learning. I went to university with people who'd never used a washing machine, who'd never, like, cooked them for themselves, who'd never paid their rent. I think it's a learning process, so why reduce that?
Look, I sort of agree with that, but not at the cost of 10, 12 grand a year or whatever it is. I mean, I worked all through university, but I worked at the weekends, freelancing at Radio Trent.
Exactly,
but I couldn't have lived off
career.
it. Oh, it did further the career, but I couldn't have... I think there's a difference between that and working in Nando's or whatever, because you just need to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't go to university. I did an apprenticeship.
It doesn't harm you, but...
Earned as I learned.
I suppose my argument would be, if you're doing it because they need to make money, just reduce the time you're at university, and therefore they have to pay out a third less money.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? I'm not...
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of confected outrage. So why shouldn't they? But I do think it's a bit pointless having students on campus when they've got maybe 1 lecture and 1 tutorial a week. There's sort of a lot of time, and maybe they're trying to consolidate that.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I don't know how you manage to afford to be a student these days when you look at the cost of rent. I mean, rents are just astronomical now. How they can even afford just to...
Well, it's a lot of generous parents, isn't it? It's the parents forking out.
Again, begs the question...
Brace yourself, Kevin.
Well, I'm trying not to think about that. But you know, does it mean that university then becomes the preserve of the very wealthy, or people with wealthy parents who can pay their
It's
kids
becoming a worry, just like you hear American parents talking about. You know, when you have a baby, you have to immediately start paying into the college fund for them, or you simply won't have enough money for them to go through uni.
Apparently, the cost now of getting a child to 18 is £200,000 in this country.
And that's to 18.
I don't understand our system. I don't understand why the early years, nothing is free. No free meals, no free nursery, no proper... I mean, yeah, you get your 15 hours, whatever. No proper provision. It's such an odd system, you know, and then everybody gets free school meals, and everybody, even the wealthy, can go to good state schools. It's such a kind of imbalanced and messed up system.
What irritates me, really, is the idea that when the whole let's get 50% of people to university was all everyone should have access to university.
Yeah.
Which sounds good on the surface. It sounds very equalitarian on the surface, doesn't it? But the result of it is, as you say, it's actually going to... Because they then start charging for it and all the rest of it, it's only going to be the richest who can go. Whereas if it was purely done on merit, then they could pay... It'd be a lot fewer people going, and they could pay grants.
They could pay grants.
Then anyone could go, regardless of background.
And it's so expensive now, isn't it? I mean, places like London, I literally don't know how people pay rent here. And you've got so many foreign students, as we know, as we've talked about many times, coming over here, paying huge amounts, and paying huge amounts for their accommodation.
Yeah.
And landlords can just, in those areas, in those student areas, if there isn't enough accommodation, they can just push those rents up. It must be very, very worrying time for young people.
Don't expect to send your kids to university, I suppose.
No.
Meanwhile, Prince Andrew wants his £3 million a year armed police protection back.
Yeah, well, so I've chosen this story because I think it's a really good talker. I wonder how many viewers think that Prince Andrew, given all the controversy surrounding him, should be receiving £3 million a year security protection. Given that he's no longer a working royal, He doesn't have an HRH title. Now, he lost his round-the-clock protection as a result of that. But there does seem to be a campaign afoot. People like Priti Patel think he should be getting it back.
Really?
Now, there's a Tory grandee. There's a bit of an odd story because it doesn't say who it is. But apparently, a Tory grandee and a knight has made a direct appeal to Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, to restore Prince Andrew's security protection. And I just wonder whether, you know, the public would...
But hasn't that sort of diktat probably come from the King?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the King has been very hard on his brother, hasn't he?
He has, but now he's letting him stay at Royal Lodge. He's thought he had him up to Balmoral over the summer with Sarah.
I mean, Prince Andrew is still the Queen's son, and therefore a very famous person. Surely he is a target, and his security does need to be considered, doesn't it?
Well, you would, yeah, I think he needs a level of security. There's no doubt about it. He's still a high-profile person.
He still will have some.
People will want to potentially target him, and they might think he's a soft target now that he doesn't have the round-the-clock security. But I just wonder, £3 million a year, whether politically this is a smart thing for senior Conservatives to be campaigning on.
No, not at the moment, I wouldn't have thought. We've got to leave it there. Emma, Kevin, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on.
But right now, I think we're going to catch up with the weather forecast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, a bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere, there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening, so a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland. But for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Loads of you getting in touch about Nadine, and you are split. I have to say, it's 50-50, really. Talfin says, Nadine Dorries is right. I'm pretty sure Sunak was involved in the downfall of Boris Johnson. Well, yeah, he was,
yeah.
Definitely was.
Yeah, Roy says the same. She blames Rishi, as do lots of others, for stabbing Boris in the back.
Frank says Nadine Dorries is quite right and factually correct, but the truth is no politician can be trusted.
And Donald in Dumfries agrees, I think. He says she's like the rest of the Tory party on the countdown to oblivion.
Leon in Northampton says, in my opinion, Nadine Dorries was always a second-rate politician. She was given a safe seat despite standing for Manchester 4 years previously.
And Eileen says Nadine is right about one thing. We do have an unelected Prime Minister who probably will lose the next election.
Keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.com, and the latest on that resignation in just a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Sunday the 27th of August. Today, Nadine Dorries finally quits. The Conservative MP and former minister has resigned, but she's accused the Prime Minister of endangering her safety by whipping up a public frenzy.
FIFA has suspended the Spanish Football Federation president, Luis Rubiales, over that infamous World Cup kiss. The federation instead say they're going to take legal action against what they're calling lies.
We're going to be heading to Wales later on this morning, as many people apparently are choosing the nation as their favourite staycation destination. So we want to know, what's your choice?
And Jonathan from the Met Office has got your weather.
A mixed bag of weather today. Some sunshine, but also showers and drizzly rain for others. Join me later to find out what you will be experiencing.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've been talking about resignations this morning for obvious reasons, and your stories are coming in. Ian says, I told my manager this before I left. I forgot to tell you that you are a sad, sorry excuse for a human being. Everybody laughs at you behind your back with your fake wannabe posh accent. You are a joke. But I did feel guilty afterwards.
Oh, that it felt good at the time.
Quite harsh.
Yeah. Les in Northumberland says he's been contracted all his life, works as a contractor. I'm now retired, and it used to give me great pleasure to tell an employer where to stick their job, and then I'd walk off into the sunset.
Oh, yeah, that sounds quite nice. Simon says, I left a teaching role. It was insisted the week before my departure that I complete spring reports for students. This was in December. It was 3 months in advance and without data or evidence. Totally unusual. A petty revenge strategy by the head teacher. See, that's terrible because it's obviously not doing the children any good, is it? It doesn't help the children if you're doing it without evidence. But there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Of course, we're talking about all of this because of that revenge. It's a revenge. It sort of was a revenge resignation letter, wasn't it, from Nadine Dorries, who has, at last, resigned from the House of Commons more than 2 months after saying she was standing down with immediate effect.
Yes, but the immediate effect is now. The former Culture Secretary and staunch ally of Boris Johnson, of course, used her resignation letter to attack the Prime Minister. She accused him of abandoning Conservative principles, and that's just the nice bit.
Yes, let's talk to former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, who joins us now. Oh, David. David, I tell you what, she's let rip, hasn't she?
Yeah, but she's like that. I mean, I never took her seriously as a politician, and I think she's a joke figure. And and then the fact that Boris put her into the cabinet in a job that I used to hold actually made her seem to be even more of a joke. So no, I mean, look, what she has done is ranted on at Rishi Sunak. The idea that Rishi Sunak, the trouble with Rishi Sunak is not that he's too busy telling everyone where to put themselves, which is her assertion, but Rishi doesn't do enough to do that. He sort of is a rather sort of passive individual, like, you know, people sort of throwing balls at a coconut shy. The coconut doesn't really respond. So a lot of this is nonsense. And you know what I think is totally pathetic? You know, she doesn't live in her constituency. She lives many miles away. She hasn't done an advice centre in years. And she claims, oh, that's because she's been threatened. Well, you know, not wishing to promote myself as a hero here, we just didn't think. But, you know, I was on couple of IRA death lists. The police said, oh, you're on an IRA death list. I said, so? They said, we just thought you'd like to know. But I still continue to do my advice centres. And I just think that the way that she is behaving is disgraceful. And the reason why she's behaving like this is because, you know, she takes an oath in Parliament to be the representative of her Bedfordshire constituency, but she then thinks she'd rather go to the House of Lords. To hell with her constituents. She thinks she's got a deal to go to the House of Lords. And then, of course, when she isn't offered the peerage, she has a hissy fit of a simply grotesque kind. Apart from that, by the way, I think she's wonderful. I really do.
Yeah, one of our viewers, Jennifer in Norfolk, morning Jennifer, says Nadine's letter of resignation is a tantrum in print. Would you agree?
Well, yes. I think that she's put it very, very moderately. You know, if we weren't on air, I could really let fly. You know, I'm moderating my thoughts about her. But at the end of the day, look, I quite worry about the future of the Conservative Party. I've been worried about the future of the Conservative Party for some considerable time. But with people like her, I mean, you know, Rishi's got to ask himself whether he would rather go down fighting or whether he will just be this essentially passive individual. But that's a subject for another conversation. Look, a house divided against itself cannot stand. She is one of those people who is delighting in proving that, you know, the Conservative Party is not a united party. And so why would anyone really want to vote Conservative when this kind of nonsense goes on? Nonsense after nonsense after nonsense. And of course, if the Conservatives do badly, she'll say, well, I told them they would, without actually allowing us to say, you and your antics have not exactly helped.
No, I mean, that's part of the problem, isn't it? She seems to be sort of wanting the downfall, to see the downfall. But some of what she says is resignating. Pat's been in touch and says she's 100% right. The Prime Minister is no leader with no vision.
Well, that is the charge, you know. Count number one on the indictment, my lord, is that Rishi Sunak has no vision, and he needs to prove that he has. I wait expectantly. will I get my desire that he stands up and really sounds like a true leader with confidence and with genuine beliefs? The jury's out on that one.
It's odd, isn't it, when you've been a faithful Tory, you've been an MP, you've been a minister, you'd think there'd be more loyalty simply towards the party. But in this, she actually says, since you took office a year ago, the country is run by a zombie parliament where nothing meaningful has happened. I mean, she's sort of handing Keir Starmer the next election, isn't she?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? And you see, what's so awful, this is also self-serving. She's acting like a spoilt, unsuitable words to put on public television. She's acting like a spoilt what's-it, because they didn't give her a peerage. What right does she really think she has to get a peerage halfway through a parliament when she has pledged to serve her constituents for the whole of that parliament? I mean, I just think it would be nice to sit her in a darkened room, shine a spotlight in her face and say, here's the truth about you. But, you know, it ain't going to happen. That's probably no bad thing.
Yeah, mind you, John's been in touch and he says, to be fair to Nadine, when you get a hairdresser becoming a dame, but all the years she's been an MP, you can see why she's got the hump. To be fair, Kelly didn't become a dame. No. She got a lower honour than that, but nevertheless, I mean, his point stands.
Well, look, I think at the end of the day, there is a limit to how much tolerance the public will have of the Conservative Party. And you know, she comes out of the woodwork with a hissy fit of great magnitude. I mean, a Shakespearean hissy fit. The bard would have been proud to have written some of those lines. If he wanted a vengeful old trout, those are the sort of words a vengeful old trout would say, and Shakespeare couldn't have done any better. But the reality is, if it's not her, it's somebody else. And if it's not somebody else, it's somebody else again. I think for me, as an observer of all of this, but having spent most of my political career under the political discipline of Margaret Thatcher and her various allies who helped her keep party discipline, she would not have tolerated any of this. She would rather have gone down fighting. I don't know what it is with Rishi, and hopefully his expensive holiday in California has done him a lot of good. But he's got to come out fighting. There is no point now. There's no escape. If he wants to go down, let him go down in a worthy way for a Conservative Prime Minister. At the moment, he's so passive, you almost want to go and kick him up the trousers and say, come on, man, get going.
You mentioned Margaret Thatcher. Alex has been in touch, and he says, the best political resignation I've ever witnessed was Geoffrey Howe, who calmly dismantled the Iron Lady in front of all of us.
He absolutely did, but that was because, you know, what was it? Dennis Healey said, being attacked by Geoffrey Howe was like being savaged by a dead sheep. Well, you know, the dead sheep did some good. I mean, Margaret Thatcher could drive people round the bend. And, of course, that cost her dear. But ultimately, she will go down in history as a strong woman who did her best for the country and had a set of beliefs that she would never, ever move away from. Yeah, if you said to me, your life depends on telling me what Rishi Sunak really believes, I don't know what I'd say, actually.
David, when you left office, were you ever tempted to write a letter like this, to really have your say?
Look, I turned down a bid from a publisher for £250,000 advance on my memoirs. Why did I do that? First of all, because I was too lazy to write them, but also because I just thought it was wrong that one should write about things for one's own personal benefit without giving a thought for the party's wider interest. What I find so awful about Nadine Dorries, you'd think she was the most unfairly condemned person in Parliament. And yet, what has she done to merit a peerage? What has she done to merit anyone thinking well of her? I mean, I've been going through, you know, I lead a sad life down here, and I've been going through the cuttings. And, you know, the people who are most condemnatory of her are not actually the Labour Party, but her own local Conservative council in Flitwick, the chairman of the Mid Bedfordshire Conservative Association. All these people are sick to the guts of her, and yet she seems to think she's somehow some kind of heroine. And I think, this is like going to a football game, actually, and not wanting either side to win. I don't want Doris to be successful, but equally, I do think, unless Rishi, gets out on that pitch and starts kicking the ball around, we haven't got a chance for that. So it's all very sad, actually. It wasn't a nice sunny day down here in Dorset, where asylum seekers don't like to go, but I can tell you the Isle of Purbeck with our nice view of Portland is a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. I would probably wonder myself whether it wasn't time to shuffle off this mortal coil, but there you are.
OK,
don't say
David.
that.
No, don't say that, David. Not yet, because we've still got some use for you. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Oh.
Well, he didn't mince his words.
No, of course not.
No. Very good too. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening this morning. Donald Trump has raised nearly $20 million in donations in the last 3 weeks, despite, or perhaps because of, his indictment in federal and state cases. The former president has raised $7 million alone since being booked on Thursday at that jail in Georgia. He denies all charges filed against him.
Rishi Sunak has announced that dangerous offenders who commit the most heinous murders will face life behind bars with no chance of being released. Under new government plans, the law will be changed so that judges are required to impose whole life orders on only the most depraved killers, except in extremely limited circumstances.
And the Labour Party has attracted a surge of interest from big business, allegedly, ahead of its annual conference in October, following a pledge from the Shadow Chancellor to rule out any version of a wealth tax under a Labour government. The opposition says its latest figures show the number of attendees at its business forum have gone up by 50%.
That is amazing about Donald Trump, isn't it? I think it's because of the indictments and the mugshot. It's just raising more and more money.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, actually.
It is.
It'd finish anybody else. I mean, over here, can you imagine? It would just finish somebody off. Over there, it just boosts him. Very odd. Anyway, look, here at GB News, we like to have our finger on the pulse, and yesterday was no exception. On their Saturday morning live show, Esther and Phil delivered a GB News exclusive by predicting Nadine Dorris's resignation.
Should we take a look at what they said?
We did promise you an exclusive, didn't we?
Yeah, and it's our understanding. We've had it from a very good source, a very authoritative source, and it is our understanding, which you're going to hear first of all here on GB News now, that we believe Nadine Dorries will actually resign her seat next week.
Well.
Didn't get it quite right, though, did they?
Well, I wonder why that was. Esther and Phil are here in the studio. Well, the supposition could well be that you were right, but she decided once it was out, she needed to go.
Oh, so you gave her a little push, did you?
I think it was probably the Daily Mail gave her a push. I think because it was out and we'd said that and therefore it was being reported and all the rest of it, I think the Daily Mail said, hold on, our exclusive that you're going to do for us next week, it's going to be a waste of time. You'd better get it written now, I think. So I suspect that the Daily Mail pushed her forward on it.
GB News announcement just preempted it by a day or two. That's what.
But who's your source?
Oh, we couldn't say that.
And you are a marvellous journalist, and you would know better than anybody that you don't reveal.
Go on, spill the beans.
What do you think this is meaning for the PM? All of this now that she's gone and we've seen the letter.
What it means for him, I think people need to read her resignation letter. I mean, the reality was, looking at the timing, she would have had to have gone before Parliament started back up again. There was plans afoot by the Lib Dems. We had Christine Jardine on, and they were looking to lay a motion first day back, so, to have a recall motion, so she'd have to go. So she realised the clock was ticking. But remember, Nadine had started that clock ticking herself several months ago. And when you say, I'm going to resign with immediate effect, and you don't, all of a sudden people are saying, well, what are you doing? What is this about? There were 3 by-elections. Why didn't she go at the same time as that? People then start writing stories. Is it because she wants to inflict maximum what's it, maximum effect on Rishi Sunak and do it slightly later. So there is a combination of by-elections. So there was lots going on there. But really, if you read that resignation letter, to me, it was more like a book plug. She couldn't have mentioned her book any more times. And I think that really is what it's about. And I think reading that, and, you know, she is a great fictional writer, best-selling fictional author, and I'm sure it'll be a great read. But to me, this was a plug for her
Well,
book
that's what I thought.
she left.
This book that she's writing is apparently coming out next month.
Right. It was also meant to come out the eve of the Tory party conference. Again, maximum effect. And it's not. It's been delayed. But you've still got to do an announcement for it. And I guess this is it. This was it.
So is this basically all, despite the fact she's, you know, she would appear to be writing on behalf of her constituents and Conservatives up and down the country in all of this, that's what she would no doubt claim. It's me, is it, Philip?
Yeah, she's writing on behalf of herself. I mean, look, Nadine's an entertaining character, but she's a fantasist, and she's, you know, this is.
In what way is she?
Well, I mean, I mean, if anyone who reads this letter, I mean, there's something in every paragraph you could pick holes in. My favourite paragraph. I mean, look, basically, Nadine, she complains about the fact that prime ministers have been removed without any election. I mean, she's been disloyal to 3 of the 5 prime ministers she talks about and agitated against them at every turn. In effect, she's only ever had just this blind loyalty to Boris Johnson. And I think my favourite paragraph in this letter is when she talks about how Rishi Sunak hasn't been delivering on a Conservative agenda. She refers to him increasing corporation tax to 25%. Well, that was announced when Boris was prime minister.
That was Boris's announcement.
That was Boris's policy. Taking us the highest tax take since World War II. That was Boris. That happened under Boris. Failed in reducing illegal immigration. Well, did Boris reduce illegal immigration when he was there? That's when the whole thing was getting worse and worse and worse, and we had the highest level of immigration in our history when Boris was Prime Minister. And then the favourite bit of this paragraph, she talks about the Windsor Framework brought into existence by shady promises of future preferment with grubby rewards and potential gongs to MPs. I mean, this is the person who's resigning from Parliament because simply for the simple reason that she didn't get a gong that she felt she was entitled to. And she's got the nerve to criticise other people about grubby rewards and potential gongs. I mean, this is just, I mean...
But you never let the facts get in the way of a good story, do you?
Why
That's
anybody...
why I say she's a great fictional writer.
Why anybody would take a blind bit of notice of what Nadine's got to say, Lord only knows.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next. I think a lot of people watching this, who cares? I mean, who's Nadine Dorries anyway, really? Is it very impactful? I mean, is it really going to make any difference? Is it going to keep Rishi Sunak awake at night?
No, I think Rishi's going to be delighted that she's going to be no longer in Parliament, to be perfectly honest, as are quite a lot of other people. I mean, she talked about a zombie Parliament. I mean, how would she know? She hasn't been there, to be perfectly honest. I mean, people might say that she's been a zombie MP, but I'm not entirely sure on what basis she knows it's been a zombie Parliament. She hasn't been there for the last
I think she's got a lot of frustration about the things that never went on. But actually, a lot of people say that started with COVID. That started with those lockdowns. So what you might have wanted to do to deliver some of the Brexit dividends didn't happen because you're in lockdown. 400 billion was spent on lockdown. That statist approach, that socialist approach of locking everybody down was lockdown, of which she was part of the government. And now you say,
she was, not only that, she was one of the biggest cheerleaders for that policy in government.
Yeah, rule of 6, 10 p.m. curfew, etc., etc. So when you look at what people are doing now, it's actually trying to get the country back on track for that. So I look at that and I think, actually, some of this frustration, I think, is against yourself. Some of those things that didn't happen, you were there and it didn't happen. So I think that's really a big part of the story.
Have either of you ever been tempted to resign in this sort of manner? Walk out of a job and tell the boss exactly what you think of him?
Well, I did resign, didn't I, over Brexit? So I was the Secretary of State at the Department of Work and Pensions. And this was because Brexit wasn't being delivered. But it certainly was nothing like this. It was why I didn't feel I could stay because of the things that were very important.
You didn't get personal.
Never, never, ever have I got personal, because you've got to say, well, what am I doing? I am part of a team. This is what we want. And actually, it was what the country wanted was Brexit, and we weren't doing that through Theresa May at the time. And I've been in government with all of these various characters: David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson. So I do have a very good overview of what
In
different people
Cabinet,
like.
do you actually tell people what you think of them, though? Would you actually turn to a Prime Minister and say, you're talking rubbish?
I will be honest with you. A lot of the time you could, but sometimes people could leak stories from there as well. So you've got to be very careful. So I did ask for a private meeting with Theresa May when I was going through what we did on Brexit, because I wanted to make sure it didn't go in any papers. I wouldn't do it. She wouldn't have done it. Obviously, a very discreet and loyal woman. She wouldn't, but I wanted to tell her in private, and I certainly didn't want a room of other people discussing what I'd said.
No, the only person you ever tell them what you really think of them
is Philip.
Oh, yeah. and don't worry, she lets it rip there, I'll tell you. She doesn't hold back.
No, I bet.
That's why you were sitting there laughing, Philip.
Good to see you both.
Yes,
well
lovely.
done on a great scoop yesterday.
Oh, we'll have more on that Saturday morning live, 10 till 12. We've got more.
Yeah, who else is going to resign? Smashing, thanks.
Oh, dear. Let's get a scoop on the weather for you now.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. It's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening, so a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland. But for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Lots more still to come for you, of course. The latest on Nadine Dorries's resignation, of course. Plus, we're going to be talking to Annalise Dodds from the Labour Party.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, we're being greeted by superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 8:28, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, you can tell there's a general election coming up in the near future, can't you? Today, Labour is boasting about being the party of economic growth, reporting a surge in business interest at this year's annual conference.
Yeah, according to internal analysis, the party's expected to make up to £500,000 from business sponsorship this year, up from $200,000 in 2022.
Well, we're joined now by Chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds. And a very good morning to you. First of all, the resignation letter of Nadine Dorries. Has she almost, or do you feel she's almost handed the Labour Party the next election?
Good morning. Well, I certainly think that she's taken a very long time to decide to resign, and people living in her constituency are really sick of this situation where they've not had proper representation. But I do think, although I disagree with Nadine Dorries on many things, when she says that we currently have a zombie parliament, and when she asks what Rishi Sunak stands for and what he's achieved, I think many people will be saying they don't understand either. And I think this is incredibly damaging when, as we know, our country's in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We have a crisis in our NHS, crisis of crime on our streets, and yet we seem to have a zombie government that just can't get a grip. So we do need to see a change, and obviously Labour's in pole position, hoping that we will see a Labour MP elected in that constituency.
Oh, I'll tell you what, though, that's a bit difficult, isn't it, saying you don't know what the Prime Minister stands for? A lot of people would say that about Rishi Sunak. He's done more U-turns than you can count, including now, so we're told, on the wealth tax. Rachel Reeves saying there's going to be no form of wealth tax if Labour come to government. Well, that's an absolute U-turn.
With respect, I'm afraid we've been really clear about that for a very long time indeed, and Labour's explicit. We've got to be clear about those questions of how we'll pay for the changes that we want to make, and some of that will involve difficult choices. We've been clear that we would scrap those tax breaks for private schools. We'd use that money to ensure every child had an excellent school. We'd also scrap the non-dom tax exemption. We believe that if you live in our country, you should pay tax in our country, and we'd use that tax money to actually pay for the NHS staff boost that we need to see, and for breakfast clubs for every primary school child. So we would take difficult choices, but we've been really upfront and explicit about what those choices are. We've not seen that upfront approach, I'm afraid, from the Conservatives, and we have seen just drifting on difficult issues for our country when a government should be getting a grip on them and actually facing up to those challenges and opportunities.
Nadine Dorries-Hall takes a swipe at the Labour Party in her letter, though. She says to Rishi Sunak, it is a fact that there is no affection for Keir Starmer out on the doorstep. He does not have the winning X-factor qualities of a Thatcher, a Blair or a Boris Johnson. And then she says, and sadly, Prime Minister, neither do you. I mean, is that true? On the doorstep, when you're doing your campaigning, do people want to vote Labour, or is it just that they don't believe in the Conservatives anymore?
People do want to vote Labour, in my experience, and there's a huge amount of support for Keir Starmer. I mean, people do not want to have a politician who's fixated on reality TV shows. They want to have politicians who are actually focused on the challenges facing our country, and people recognise that in Keir. He's someone who has not been a politician for all of his life. He has run a very large organisation before. He's delivered before. He's delivered particularly when it comes to ensuring the safety of women and girls when he worked in criminal justice. He's someone who's got that track record of delivery, and people recognise that. And they recognise that he's straight with them and that he's open and upfront. And in particular, they recognise that Keir has said we're not going to be able, if Labour is elected, to fix everything overnight. He's been very upfront and honest about that. And I think that's very different, again, to the kind of, sticking plaster, soundbite related politics that we've seen over the last 13 years with Conservative-led governments.
But he does change his mind a lot. I mean, we can't escape from the fact that there have been a lot of reversing going on from what he's promised one minute to what he's promising the next. That must be frustrating. I mean, as someone who's been a politician, as you have been for a considerable amount of time, really, and with the experience you have, that must be very frustrating, mustn't it?
Well, I don't recognise that. Actually, Keir's always been clear that he's absolutely focused on the needs of working people. He understands that inside out. Obviously, with his family history, he's someone who really wants to make sure that our country is one that works for working people, and he's been absolutely resolute on that. We have seen, when it comes to particularly economic questions, our country moving in the wrong direction, pretty spectacularly in the wrong direction over the last few months, particularly with that disastrous mini-budget that we had last November. That means the fiscal situation will be very difficult, that situation of the public finances, the money that government has to spend. And actually, both Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been really clear about this. We're not going to make promises that we can't deliver. We've seen the harm that causes, especially last November, but with other aspects of Conservative policy as well. Labour's very different. We're not going to promise what we can't deliver. That's the difference between Labour and the Conservatives.
I mean, there's no doubt at the moment one feels that we are almost in electioneering mode. And today you announced that Labour's back in business because the business attendance at the annual conference is soaring. Are you on a business charm offensive?
Well, actually, what we've seen is a genuine desire to engage with Labour, and we've been really clear. We want to make sure we've got that partnership with business, working hand in hand with business, and that's certainly been the case with our Green Prosperity Plan. For example, we've got a shared agenda to drive economic growth in our country. We've seen really sluggish growth over the last 13 years. That's had a really negative impact on people's wages, on living standards, and business wants to change that, just as Labour want to change it too. So we're determined to work in partnership with business, also with, of course, trade unions, with local communities, to really seize those opportunities for the future, because we're losing a lot of global races at the moment when our country actually has got the skills, it's got the knowledge, the expertise, it's got the natural resources to make best use of them. But under a Conservative government, we've been held back.
Look, I hate to throw this at you. Well, I don't hate to do it, but it's worth, But this is a list, and I can't go through all the details because we haven't got enough time. But this is a list from The Guardian, right, which obviously is a Labour supporting paper, of Keir Starmer's U-turns: abolish tuition fees, the Green Prosperity Plan, common ownership, raising income tax for the highest owners, defending migrants' rights, tech companies' tax raid, ending universal credit, and the Rosebank oil and gas field. They're significant U-turns, and even The Guardian is highlighting. You can't on this programme say, well, you don't recognise the fact that he performs a lot of U-turns and people don't know what he stands for.
Well, I have to say that I would dispute a lot of the claims about that list that you just mentioned. I mean, if you look at the Green Prosperity Plan, for example, we're absolutely determined to put that plan into place. What we've been clear about, and what we will always be clear about with the British public, is that we are in a difficult set of financial circumstances as a country. Now, that's not been of Labour's making, that's been of the Conservative government's making. They've made our economic situation worse than that of many other countries. We're still the only G7 country whose economy is smaller now than it was before the COVID crisis. Now, because of that, because we've not seen that economic growth coming back, of course, we've got to take difficult choices, and we're not going to be able to change things overnight. It doesn't mean that we don't want to see change, and we have been explicit. We will implement that Green Prosperity Plan, but we're not going to be able to do it quite as quickly as we initially announced. Why? Because of that financial situation that's been created by the Conservatives. And we're never going to make commitments that we can't deliver. As I say, we've seen the harm from that, particularly last November under the Conservatives. You know, that harm has led to, in many cases, £1,000 extra being shoved onto people's mortgages. Now, Labour will never do that to people. We will always be upfront about the economic choices that we're making, and Keir Starmer always has been. So is Rachel Reeves. That's quite right.
Are we almost out of time?
I think we are.
I think we are.
It's
So,
really good to talk to you, though.
Final point, though, Annalise, because you always come across as a very calm and measured lady. Have you ever let rip in a resignation letter or stormed out on an old boss or something?
Oh, goodness, what a question. Well, it's kind of you to say that I always appear calm. I'm not sure if my kids would always say that question. Have I ever let rip? I don't think so, but I suppose in that time-honoured phrase, revenge is a dish that is best served cold, I think. However, I think that dignity tends to be the best approach in these circumstances, often rather than anger, I would say.
Do you sympathise at all with Nadine Dorries? What do you actually think of anyone writing a letter like this? 3 pages long, very personal criticism. What do you think?
Well, I suppose on the one hand, clearly she's expressing her own frustration with the situation. But I have to say, for people on the ground, and I have been talking with people in Mid-Bedfordshire, as you would expect. Obviously, we selected our great candidate, Alistair Strathern, some time ago. So I have been talking with people on the doorstep, and I think they'll be pretty frustrated by this, to be honest. They want to have an MP who wants to be an MP. They want to have an MP who's really focused on them, who'll take up their issues, who's focused on things like the mortgage crisis, big issue in Mid-Bed, lots and lots of owner-occupiers there, people, particularly first-time buyers, just getting their first step on the ladder and really struggling. And I think they really would want to see more of a focus on their concerns, rather than how a politician might feel about what's happened. Really, there should be that focus on ordinary people and working people's concerns, frankly, not politicians.
Yes, ordinary people, absolutely, which is why I'm going to organise a sit-down exclusive with your children, Annalise Dodds, to
find out what they really think.
To see what it's like when you let rip, as I'm sure you do on occasion. Really good to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, dear. I bet, well, yes, all mothers can be a bit fierce when they need
Well, you have to be. You have to be.
Do you know, that's what I like, though. And to be fair, a lot of the politicians we get on seem to be very nice people, whichever party they're on. And I always think it's really nice when you can sort of just get a little thing under the skin.
See her laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't often see her laugh.
Being not a politician, but just being a person.
Yeah. Now, look, recently we were talking, in fact, yesterday, wasn't it, about Dawlish being chosen as the top place for staycations here in the UK. And we want to discover more about the British Isles. This time, we're going to visit Wales.
Yes, we're on the beautiful island of Anglesey in the north, so the breathtaking views, of course, in Snowdonia National Park. also in the north. Wales has a lot to offer.
Oh, it does. It's brilliant. Joining us now is a professional Welsh photographer, Larry Gwan Evans. Good morning. Lovely to see you.
Good morning, bore da.
Bore da. Yes, how beautiful is Wales? Well, you're the person looking through the lens. Where do you go for particular shots of beauty? What would you recommend?
So I'm currently, I've just finished a whole project about Llyn Fan Fach, which is a lake in Brecon. So I focused on the mythology of Llyn Fan Fach, and yeah, I would highly recommend. It's a beautiful place.
I mean, that's the interesting thing about Wales. I think that it does have a mythology around it. And when you look at any sort of history books, even some decent sort of old-fashioned novels, and it's part of that mystery, which is part of the appeal.
Absolutely. I feel like I like to add a bit of atmosphere and mystery to my photography, so it's kind of like a perfect topic, really. And what I'm trying to do is kind of contemporise Welsh mythology to make it more appealing for young people, because I think it's vital to keep it alive.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at some amazing shots now. I see Snowdonia Mountains there. I mean, Wales has got everything, really, hasn't it? As you were saying, it's got tiny little villages with interesting little bits and pieces to photograph. Oh, look, steam trains, the Brecon beacons. Yeah, I mean, you've got a bit of everything there. From your point of view as a professional photographer, it's rich for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I actually moved to Edinburgh to do my photography degree. But I ended up, even though it's absolutely beautiful there, I ended up, focusing on Wales. So, yeah, lots of trips home. And, yeah, you're always near a beach, a castle or a mountain, wherever you are, really. So, yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Do you think as Brits we give enough focus to our home nations, and particularly somewhere like Wales? You know, we understandably, we want to get in the sunshine. We often head off to the Costa del whatever. But actually, we need to explore our own country a bit more, don't we?
Absolutely, I 100% agree. Especially, this summer's been quite warm, so, there's no need to be jetting off to Spain. And, Wales is a perfect place, really. I think, it doesn't get as much recognition as it should. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are you working on at the moment? Have you got a particular folio of photographs? Are you looking for a particular theme at the moment?
Welsh culture has always been at the heart of what I do. I've kind of been experimenting a lot with social media and working a lot in social media recently. So I've been fortunate enough to create content in Welsh, but I'm kind of looking more at social media at the minute, but I'll definitely be revisiting this project on Welsh mythology because I absolutely love it. I'm so passionate about it, and I'd like to make more photographs.
Yeah, I've got to ask, because obviously you do speak the Welsh language. I mean, which is, you know, it's got to be said, it is sort of dying out a little bit. A lot of Welsh don't speak the Welsh language. That in itself is the most. I think it's the most extraordinary language. I mean, to my ears, it's very hard to understand how you get your tongue around it.
Yeah, Welsh was my first language. I speak Welsh with my family, with my friends. I grew up speaking Welsh in primary school, secondary school. I did all my GCSEs in Welsh, and it's a growing language. Actually, I feel like I got a lot more opportunities growing up because I spoke Welsh. A lot more job opportunities in Wales for me just because I speak Welsh, and I absolutely love the language, and I use it on a day-to-day basis, so I would highly encourage anyone to learn it.
Oh, well, I'd like to try.
It makes Wales, as you said, even more special, doesn't it?
Even more Welsh.
But we're very Welsh.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you, Larry.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much
Thank you for talking to me. Lovely to see you.
Say that in Welsh.
Diolch yn fawr.
Oh, perfect, love it. Thank you very much indeed. I find it fascinating because it's such a guttural sort
Yes,
of
it is,
language,
isn't it?
Which is so very alien to English, I think.
I saw Wales last year from a ship, actually, because we were cruising around. And that's an interesting way to see the land, is from the sea. Fascinating. But I was with a large group of Americans, and they couldn't get over the fact that we have this little country on the side, and it has its own language, and it's so extraordinarily beautiful. They couldn't get over that.
I've got family in Wales, in North Wales, and they just love it. Absolutely love it.
But isn't it compulsory to learn Welsh in Welsh schools?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it is. I think it is. We'll check.
Know.
We'll check.
There you go. Stay with us. We've got lots more still to come for. You're going to have to squeeze it in quite quickly, but we'll take you through Sunday's papers after the break.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, let's have a quick rattle through the papers this morning then with writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and HuffPost UK political editor Kevin Schofield. Good morning to you both. With your background, Emma, we better start with the Sunday Telegraph looking at literature.
Well, yeah, it is about Shakespeare, but more importantly, do you say dinner or supper? What do you say for your evening meal?
Tea.
Tea. Thought you might.
Yeah, we say tea now. When I grown up, I said
dinner. Supper was like a snack. You might
Yeah,
go
supper
to
was a
bed.
slice of toast before bed. Yeah.
Supper, really?
Yeah.
And what do you say for your midday meal?
Dinner.
Lunch.
Yeah.
Lunch.
A database has been put together with about 20,000 words showing how Shakespeare used language. And apparently Shakespeare said dinner for his midday meal, which I would call lunch, and he used supper for the evening meal.
Oh.
Dinner and supper.
But tea is hilarious. I've just been asking someone out the back whether they would invite a girl for tea. They said no, but they would say...
Coffee.
Tea at home with their mam up north. But dinner, if you're going to invite someone out for a meal in a restaurant.
Oh, I see. So
yeah. You wouldn't see you're going out to a restaurant for your tea.
For your tea?
No, so you said dinner for that.
We
But it was always breakfast, dinner, tea.
Yeah.
Dinner at lunchtime.
Yeah.
It's lunch.
I think it was when I was a child. I think dinner was lunch.
Yeah,
Dinner
but
was
like
at
dinner
lunchtime.
ladies, you see.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, you have dinner ladies.
One of our daughter's friends came round to the house, and my wife said, "Do you want your tea with us?" And she was, "Oh, I don't drink tea."
Yeah.
She meant dinner.
Yeah.
So just different houses.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
But
But I think it's regional, isn't it?
It is regional, yeah. Up north, there's a lot more dinner
Not
going
like
on at
it is.
lunchtime and tea going on at dinner time.
Supper.
Supper.
Sounds
Okay.
so posh
It's
to
very
me.
posh. If you say supper for your dinner,
Tea,
to me, or your tea, to me that's really posh.
No, my
Yeah.
parents would invite friends round for a light supper.
Yes, a light supper.
Yeah.
Oh.
Charming, isn't it? I
Isn't
love
it?
the idea.
Yeah, funny.
And then high
Tea.
tea. Do you remember high tea, Anne?
Yeah, yes, exactly. I was going to say tea. This probably comes from colonial times, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we're out in India, and that's when you always had
cup of tea and a crumpet or something
Because it
at
was
4
a day.
o'clock.
It was a time of day when you
Oh, is that high
behaved in a
tea
certain
about
way.
4
High
o'clock?
tea, you'd have something in between the
4
sort of
o'clock.
lunch and dinner. Or
We
something.
never had high tea, but you shouldn't have a biscuit for 11s.
Oh,
yeah.
11s. Oh, bring back 11s.
If you went out for the day on a Sunday, you'd maybe stop in at a hotel or something for your high tea.
High tea.
And it came with toast.
Oh.
Yeah.
You ever had that?
Yeah, toast.
So it's like
toast.
dinner. You have maybe like fish and chips.
Tea and toast.
And then have
Goes
toast
together.
with it. It always seemed a bit bizarre. Weird.
Bread and butter.
But also, I
that was
think
a high tea.
people eat differently. Like, if you have dinner in the middle of the day, often that's your main meal, whereas other people have their main meal in the evening. So
Oh,
maybe
maybe.
it's a sort of regional difference of when you have your main meal.
Well, maybe.
I'm
that's
fascinated by
interesting.
the fact that Shakespeare even talked about dinner.
So
when does he talk about dinner? I don't. Can you think of a quote when he talks about dinner?
No, I can't at all.
No.
Emma can.
His characters never sat down for
Absolutely
dinner.
can't. Don't even try
Yes, it's
it.
in there somewhere.
Very
Out
weird.
damned spot, time for dinner.
But what's weird is that he was down south and he was calling it dinner at lunchtime, whereas most of his contemporaries in the south were calling it lunch.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. How we go from that to naked people in Sherwood Forest, I don't know, Kevin.
Well, apparently, Sherwood Forest, obviously of Robin Hood
Snack
fame,
boxes.
is popular with naturists. And bird watchers have been
Twitchers.
startled with their binoculars being steaming up, looking not at birds but other unmentionable things. Now, I would have thought, though, that going naked into a forest is potentially quite painful.
I would have thought so.
We don't wear shoes.
Rose thorn. Well, but can you be naked? But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, you brush up against rose bushes and
But maybe the
nettles.
naturists.
Oh, nettles. things. Can you imagine?
Naturists are making it a destination for themselves, are they?
Apparently, and some people said, according to the RSPB, have gone even further, and they had to call in the police because they were planning to have a party of sorts, a naked party.
A naked
you know,
party.
call it.
In Sherwood Forest, it's a long way to go.
Well, they're all gathering around the great oak, aren't they? And
Absolutely. It does sound a little bit
What
potentially
is
quite
this growing
prickly.
trend for wanting to take off your clothes?
I don't get it myself.
I don't.
No.
oh well, but you've got to be free with nature. Free with nature. I'm all for it. I wouldn't want to do it
I'm all
myself.
for nude, naked swimming, but I don't really want to be naked in a cold, rainy, wet forest with all
And if
rose
you
bushes
tell
and
you,
thorns around.
no one
no.
can see you from the neck down anyway.
Well, certainly not if there's loads of ornithologists looking at around their binoculars at you.
absolutely.
Birders looking at the...
There you go. On that note, Kevin, Emma, thanks very much indeed. Here's your weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast for
provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain, a bit of a damp day here. Elsewhere, there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that have started off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening, so a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland. But for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But boom.
And action.
Sergeant, we're being greeted by superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 27th of August. Today, Nadine Dorries finally quits. The Conservative MP and former minister has now resigned, but she's accused the Prime Minister of endangering her safety by whipping up a public frenzy.
FIFA has suspended the Spanish Football Federation president, Luis Rubiales, over that infamous World Cup kiss. The federation instead say it's going to take legal action against what they're calling lies.
We've got all the latest sports updates heading your way very shortly, including a thrilling comeback by Man United, followed by a demonstration by angry fans at Old Trafford.
And Jonathan from the Met Office has got your weather.
A mixed bag of weather today. Some sunshine, but also showers and drizzly rain for others. Join me later to find out what you will be experiencing.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, loads of you getting in touch with your staycation suggestions. Gareth in Bridgend, which itself is very nice, says Salcombe in South Devon was our lifetime favourite small fishing village. It's now been totally ruined by wealthy southerners buying up everything. Oh, that's a shame.
David says, a few years ago, when I was in Australia, I drove along the Great Ocean Road in Victoria, and it was a wonderful experience. However, a few months later, I walked along the coastal path in Pembrokeshire and realised that such fantastic scenery had been on my doorstep all the time. Isn't that lovely?
You've got to explore these things. Elaine, who's in France, says my favourite staycation was always the Isles of Scilly, particularly St Martin's. You cannot take the car. Beautiful white sands, turquoise blue seas, and when people see my holiday snaps, they think I'm in the Bahamas.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's lovely when the weather's good. It looks sensational. That was the favourite holiday staycation place for Prime Minister Harold Wilson, wasn't it?
Was it?
He always used to go to the Isles of Scilly. Yeah. Chris says, I was born in Worthing, live in Worthing, and if I go 15 miles away from sunny Worthing, I get homesick. Come to sunny Worthing for your holiday. That's one you don't often hear, that, do you?
Do you have for tourist information down there?
Yeah.
And Colin says Yorkshire Dales is a must. On the moors above Harrogate, we've got a farm here, 27 years of bliss, off-grid wind turbine and our own spring water supply, totally self-sufficient.
I mean, you were right. What you said earlier is that we forget what absolute beautiful places are on our own doorstep. When I saw the Orkneys for the first time, knocked out, absolutely incredible. Yeah. Such history as well.
I've got such fond memories of a little holiday we had in Harrogate when I was about 18. And I just love Harrogate.
Very, very pretty place. Has a wonderful book festival, doesn't it?
And then we went to Brimham Rocks afterwards and Old Mother Shipton's cave and all that sort of... It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
No, I think it's lovely to celebrate Britain as we've got it. You need reminding every so often of just where the fantastic places are to go.
Maybe Nadine Dorries should be reminded of that a little bit, because she's not very happy with the state of Britain at the moment. She blames one man for it, of course. She has formally resigned from the House of Commons more than 2 months after promising to stand down with immediate effect.
Yes, it wasn't very immediate, was it? The former... Oh, no, pardon me. You better say this bit.
The former Culture Secretary and, of course, staunch ally of Boris Johnson used her resignation letter yesterday to attack the Prime Minister in the most sort of personal of ways in many respects. She's accused him of abandoning Conservative principles.
Well, joining us now is GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. And you're Camilla Tominey today, are you?
I am.
Yes.
I'm getting into Camilla Tominey's high heels a little bit later at 9:30, but not literally. But it is fascinating to read this letter. Nothing has been held back. Not just the personal criticism from everything down to what Rishi Sunak wears, to how he behaves, to his policy agenda. This is an incredible attack document.
Yeah, but it's almost sort of... I hate to say it because it sounds like a personal attack, which I don't want to do, but there's so much sort of rank hypocrisy in it all, isn't there? I mean, even down to things like attacking what he's wearing when she's wandering about in £6,000 diamond earrings and all the rest of it, down to a lot of the criticism of getting prime ministers out without them losing an election, which she's been instrumental in, throughout the reigns of various prime ministers. It does seem quite hypocritical.
I suppose you could make those criticisms. What Nadine Dorries would, of course, say is that the biggest electoral victory, and she writes this in the letter, Boris Johnson won that 2019 election with a higher share of the vote than Tony Blair did, and she feels that he was forced out and that Liz Truss was forced out in the same sort of way without that democratic process. But I think it's more than just that, and of course she's writing a book about that, something she also mentions in
She mentions
this
a couple
letter.
of times, doesn't she?
She does. One might think, sort of, is this more a resignation letter or a promotional statement? But she does dive down into policy too, on the government's U-turns on that Brexit bonfire of EU rules, on the lower defence spending, on illegal immigration and the failures there, on the ditching of BBC licence fee reform even, and of course that highest tax burden since the Second World War. There are lots of areas of policy where she has attacked this government.
But some of those areas of policy, including the higher tax burden, increasing corporation tax to 25%, the highest tax take since World War II, 75% of GDP, and the very high illegal immigration numbers, that was all under Boris Johnson.
Certainly the rise in national insurance contributions. There was a press conference that I attended in Downing Street where Rishi Sunak, Sajid Javid, the then Health Secretary, and Boris Johnson, the then Prime Minister, stood side by side saying we need to raise these taxes to fund social care. Although what Nadine Dorries also says in this letter is that the social care reform has been ditched and the money that was raised by that national insurance rise that was going to help social care has therefore not gone to that. So perhaps that's the more nuanced take, although it wasn't exactly spelled out in the letter.
I mean, we've been talking about this letter, I suppose because it's so dramatic in a way. But does it really matter? Is it going to cause any real problems in Number 10 at the moment? Or are they just going to be pleased they've got rid of her at last?
Well, it's going to reiterate a lot of these problems. No doubt we're going to be hearing people like Sir Ed Davey and Sir Keir Starmer both reiterating points that Nadine Dorries has written in these letters. These are free shots to the opposition. We've often spoken about what a lucky general Sir Keir Starmer is in terms of his opponents and the Conservative Party sort of infighting in such a way. But also, this is perhaps not the biggest surprise. There were going to be either two ways in which Nadine Dorries resigned. Either, as soon as Parliament returns, the writ would be moved. That was perhaps the most likely situation. That would put the by-election around the time of party conferences, a time of maximal pain for the Conservative Party, just as they're getting together to sort of regroup, a big by-election, a likely loss, or she could have just ridden out the Parliament. Now, I think that would have been less likely, because we were hearing that, for example, the Lib Dems' Daisy Cooper was going to put down a motion to suspend Nadine Dorries from the House for 10 days. That would trigger a recall petition had it passed Parliament. So there were lots of things that could happen as soon as Parliament returns. That's next Monday. So things were going to happen, I think, inevitably in this week.
I mean, the biggest thing, would you imagine, would irritate Nadine Dorries the most now would be the Conservatives re-winning that seat. You would imagine.
Well, that really would upset her, I think.
But that's actually not looking that unlikely, is it? Well, the Tories 4 percentage points behind Labour, but there is 10 percentage points to Reform, which surely there's at least a possibility of that slipping back to the Tories to keep Labour out.
That's one polling company's projection at this stage. And, of course, it's notoriously hard to poll such a small area and know what sort of differential turnout we have. Normally, by-elections only receive about half the turnout that general elections do. So would Conservatives be motivated to go out and vote? Might the Lib Dems have a better ground operation? I was in the seat last week seeing them knocking on doors and whatever. They've been at this for a long time.
They're very good at by-elections, aren't they?
They are very good at by-elections. There was a similar by-election in a deep blue seat, Tiverton and Honiton, with exactly the same majority, 25,000 votes that the Lib Dems were able to overturn. The expectation is they may well be able to do the same, but the confounding factor is that the Labour Party also want to take this seat. Could this turn from a safe, true blue seat into a three-way marginal in this by-election? Could the anti-Tory vote be split and the Tories come through the middle, or might the Tories actually come in third?
I guess part of the issue is going to be what her constituents think of her. And I mean, she says she's served them loyally. How fed up will they be at the fact that she's basically been... it's been a zombie constituency for the last 2 months?
I have to say that the most common thing that the people of Mid-Bedfordshire told me when I was there last week was, where's Nadine? Have you seen Nadine? It's become a sort of joke within the constituency. And even though it has been the summer recess, and no doubt across many constituencies across the United Kingdom, there'll be MPs who haven't been there for the last 2 months or have been off on what they might term as parliamentary visits to other places around the world that might be just a bit of jet setting. It seems to have really hit home and dug in amongst the constituents of Mid-Bedfordshire. So perhaps the unique situation of this by-election is a bit of a drag for the Conservatives.
So who have you got to talk to about it all today?
Well, we've got the Veterans Minister, Johnny Mercer, on the show today. So he was attending Cabinet at the same time as Nadine Dorries. No doubt he has things to say about her and indeed how that affects the Conservative Party. We've also got Tobias Ellwood, the chair of the Defence Select Committee. Lots of things to talk to him about, not least that assassination or potential assassination of Yevgeny Prigozhin. And also we've got the former Russian Prime Minister, Mr. Kasyanov, coming on the show as well. Now, he was Prime Minister of Russia from 2000 to 2004. He knows Vladimir Putin intimately. He's since been exiled from Russia. He's tried to stand against Putin in the 2009 presidential election.
Wow.
And we'll be talking about him, about what's inside the mind of Vladimir Putin. What is Putin thinking? What's his off-ramp in Ukraine? And why might he have wanted to kill Prigozhin last week?
And is Prigozhin really dead?
Quite.
I sort of think with a guest like that, Tom, you may need to extend the show.
Yeah, I think you will.
Because that could be an hour and a half in and of itself.
It really could, but we're going to try and get to grips with all of those situations. We're saving perhaps the best to last. The former Prime Minister of Russia, of course, coming on in the last 15 minutes of the programme.
Lovely stuff. Tom, thank you very much indeed. Oh, now that fascinates me.
Yeah, me too.
Someone like
who's
that.
so close and was so on the inside, yeah.
Now, from international geopolitics to us back here, motorists. Motorists, aren't we getting the stick of it all
being
lately?
clobbered.
Anyway, this is not necessarily a bad thing, actually, because motorists need to be sensible and, you know, you've got to obey the law. Motorists are being told about new speed cameras equipped with AI, which have been on a successful trial on roads in Devon and Cornwall.
Yeah, the new tech uses artificial intelligence, AI, to monitor more than just your speed. It can tell when you're using your phone, for instance, and even whether or not you've got a seatbelt on.
Yeah, well, our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has more now on how these devices have resulted in record convictions.
You may have never seen one of the new-look AI speed cameras, but you soon will. After a trial in the West Country, they're heading to a road near you. Andrew Digmer from Road Angel Group says they bring road surveillance to a whole new level.
The difference with the new AI speed camera, it actually uses two cameras. One camera will get your speed reading and your ANPR for the prosecution side of things. The other camera looks directly into the cab of the vehicle to basically see with if you're compliant with the rules of the road.
For the first time, cameras can check if motorists are on their phone or not wearing seatbelts. So far, they've caught hundreds. In the first 2 weeks alone, nearly 2,000 drivers were caught speeding. One of the cameras is recording driving offences 120 times a day, something that Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner says is concerning.
Well, I can't say I'm pleased about that. You know, we've only had it running on a couple of roads where we've tested it out, and we've had over 1,500 offences already, you know, within 2 weeks. I mean, that's not great. I think for us, you know, it shows how much education on the roads is required.
But of course, the scheme does have its critics. There are some that say that a camera that looks into your car can invade your privacy. Others say that this is another cash cow for the police. But Devon and Cornwall Police have a target. They want to halve road deaths by 2040 and to eliminate them altogether by 2050. And for that, they need technology.
Only technology is going to actually make this difference. If we get to the point of driverless cars and you can't speed and all those things, but you have to do a breathalyzer before you get in the car, before it'll start, technology will be the ultimate solution. But until we get to that point, we've got quite a lot of ways that we can really help our community understand what it is they need to be doing now, because the technology isn't there to support them at the moment.
But that technology is coming. Every day, 5 people die on our roads and 84 are seriously injured. It's hoped these new cameras will go some way towards bringing that number down and bringing us a step closer to a day when no one dies on our roads at all. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Do you think that's ever possible?
No, I don't think it is.
No.
But it's a good goal.
It is.
What I find reassuring is that lady, the crime commissioner, with those massive fines and convictions, saying, well, this isn't good. We don't want to do this.
No,
We don't
it's
want
not
to be
good.
pulling in all this money and doing that. We don't want it. We want
It's a shock that when you bring in the technology,
So
you
much
find so
better.
many people are driving badly or wrongly or against the law.
You see, I'm not a
That's
fan.
quite shocking.
I'm not a fan of speed cameras generally. But actually, these seem quite sensible.
Yeah.
Seat belts and all that sort of malarkey.
Mm.
Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. We've got much more to come, including the sport and the showbiz, in just a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 9:20. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
And Aidan and Stephanie have joined us as well, so we can have a look at the sport and at the showbiz. What should we start with?
I want to start with Catherine Townsley.
Yeah.
Because this just grips me.
Oh, Cake Gate, as I like to call it. So her 40th birthday is coming up, and she got a party organisers called Neverland to kind of make all the arrangements. They approached a bakery, Three Little Birds Bakery, and they asked the head chef there if she would do the cake for free, plus cupcakes and another cake for her husband, Catherine's husband. Unfortunately, the woman made it known on social media. She said, look, that is not going to pay my mortgage. You just paying me via an Instagram post.
Haven't they got a bit of a nerve asking for it?
I think it's so rude in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
So now Catherine has cancelled her 40th birthday. As you can imagine, during the whole Cake Gate saga, there was a whole lot of criticism that a big actress such as her, who's probably getting paid pretty well.
Can't afford her own cakes.
Yeah, so, you know, I think she's done the right thing here, because if she was to go ahead with the birthday, the media would have been all over it, and then there would have been a lot of questions on what was free and what wasn't. So it's not a happy birthday for Catherine.
No, just have a little quiet one at home with a husband.
Yeah, with cake hopefully she's paid for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or bake it yourself, absolutely. Meanwhile, in the boxing, there's quite a story.
Without doubt, yeah. I mean, Daniel Dubois from Greenwich went to Poland last night to fight the unified champion Alexander Usyk. There was an address before the fight by Volodymyr Zelensky. Huge event. And Usyk was expected to win quite comfortably. But it didn't quite go to plan. Now, it was hugely controversial, this, because Dubois was on the verge of one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, to rival when Mike Tyson was beaten by Buster Douglas back in January 1990. What actually happened was he hit Usyk on the body. It was on the belt line, quite clearly. It was a fair shot. He was down for 4 minutes. That should have been the end of the fight. The referee, sadly, Louis Pabon, adjudged the punch to be below the belt, as in the crown jewels, if we put it in the vernacular. However, that should have been the end of the fight. That should have been one of the greatest upsets in boxing history. Frank Warren, his manager, and his promoter said they will appeal the fight. And, you know, I think Usyk really dodged one last night. I really do.
Or didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever, yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
painful.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, there's going to be some fallout on that.
Yeah. Chris Evans.
It's been a big week for Chris Evans, because earlier this week he announced he's been diagnosed with skin cancer. But now this move, his latest move, is not... I don't think the public will have a lot of sympathy for him here. He went to a festival on Friday called the Car Festival, and he was driving a tuk-tuk. We know he's mad about cars, and he actually tried to perform something called the donut. And he injured 2 women that were in the tuk-tuk because it overturned.
Oh.
So he's actually kind of lucky that they only left with only minor injuries. But it's not a good look. You know, after the public has given out so much sympathy towards him, now to go to a move like
Chris,
this.
you're too old to be doing things like that.
Yeah, 57, come on,
Yeah,
Christopher.
for heaven's sake.
Been much worse.
We've got a minute, Aidan, to talk about Man United.
Yeah, really difficult week for them, wasn't it? They lost to Tottenham last week. There was the fallout of the Mason Greenwood scandal on Wednesday. They were 2-0 down at home to Nottingham Forest in 4 minutes yesterday. Turned it around to win 3-2, which is a great result for them. However, 7,000 fans staged a demonstration afterwards in protest at the ownership of the Glazers. The club was put up for sale last October, and still we're no clearer as to knowing who's going to own the club going forward. It's been up for sale for, what, 10 months now, whatever it is. £6 billion of the bids that have gone in from Ineos and from Qatar. We're hoping it will come to a head, but the United fans fed up yesterday. 7,000 of them sitting in. All is not well.
No. Well, you can understand the frustration, can't you?
It's a global institution, Stephen. You know, they want to know who's going to own it in the future, and it just adds fuel to the fire that the Glazers never wanted to sell this thing in the first place.
Yeah, no, doesn't it just? Lovely. Thank you both very much indeed, Aidan and Miss Tetchy.
I'm going to Notting Hill Carnival.
Are you?
Are you?
Hence the bling.
Have a good one.
Let's see what the weather's going to be like for Notting Hill and the rest of the country. Here's Jonathan.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's a bit of a mixed bag throughout today. Whilst high pressure is just about close by in the Atlantic, it's going to be more of a presence as we head into Monday. In the meantime, we've still got a few systems to watch out for, particularly this front in the west will be gradually pushing into Northern Ireland later today, turning quite cloudy with some drizzly and light patchy rain. Camp day here. Elsewhere there is some sunshine to be had, but the showers that off in the west will gradually push their way eastwards as we head throughout the day, generally persisting across the spine of the country. Some of those could be on the sharp side, maybe with some isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures climbing towards 22 degrees Celsius in the southeast, but that cloud across Northern Ireland really going to hold temperatures back closer to 15, 17 degrees Celsius here. And that rain will gradually push its way eastwards as we head into this evening. So a bit of a better end to the day for Northern Ireland, but for Scotland, parts of Western England and Wales, it's going to start to turn cloudy with some light and drizzly rain. Generally clearer skies. Further east, a bit of mist and fog possible, but most places holding up around 12 degrees Celsius as we start off Monday morning. For those of us lucky enough to have the bank holiday Monday off, it should be a relatively fine day overall, but there is still going to be this legacy of the cloud from that frontal system. The rain will be petering its way out, can't rule out some showers, but still a bit of cloud around. Sunnier spells for Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, Western England, and temperatures generally around where they should be, 18 to 22 degrees Celsius.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
That is it from us. But up next, it's the Camilla Tominey Show this week with Tom Harwood, the very latest on Nadine Dorries' resignation, but also talking to the former Prime Minister of Russia. That's going to be absolutely fascinating.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Shut up.